I'm going to call to order the City Council for June 12th, 2023. Firstly, we're going to turn off our cell phones. Then I'm going to acknowledge the people who came before us. We recognize that the Hood River area rests upon the ancestral lands of the Confederated Tribes of Warm Springs, Grand Ronde, and the Yakima Nation. We acknowledge the painful history of colonization, displacement, and forced removal that has profoundly impacted Indigenous communities. We commit to understanding and acknowledging the ongoing effects of this history and to actively supporting the sovereignty and self-determination of Indigenous peoples. Let's pledge allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Ubaldo has signed up to speak to the council. Ubaldo, will you come up, please, to the lectern here? To here, and the red thing we want to make turn green. Great.
Oh, thank you.
And if you can take about 3 minutes or less, that'd be great.
Yes, thank you. I really appreciate this opportunity to be able to voice some concerns of the community. My name is Ubaldo Hernandez. I'm the director for Comunidades. This is a Latino lead organization here in the court. We are fairly new. We are 3 years old. And we've been working with the Latino community to find out what the issues that are affecting our community. And one of the most important issues that our community is facing right now is affordable housing. Affordable housing is a problem for, it's an issue that our communities are suffering, and not just the Latino community, but we're talking about low-income community. Through conversations I have with different members of the community, I heard these words and these voices they always said about how this community, low-income community, feels like a prey for predatory economic practices, which we see that a lot from real estate renters, that they see the community and they try to extract the last penny out of the pocket with these high prices on rent. And that's one of the biggest issues that our community is facing. So that we see nowadays, food is getting really expensive. People are having really hard times to meet their needs. Especially paying rent when these prices are increasing in number a lot. So one of the things is, as being member of this community for 27 years, I've been seeing the benefits of the hard work of the immigrant community, the Latino community, working on the farms, picking up our crops. And I felt like it's not fair that these communities are being not paying attention when we are talking about planning housing, how they're going to pay the rent. The economy in this community is still strong as a farming community, and we see all these packing house workers, these farm workers, but also people who work in the serving industry being affected by it. We see that teachers are not able to pay rent in these areas, in these communities anymore. We see the police departments like Hood River, White Salmon, they can't afford to live there anymore. The same is in Hood River. At this moment, we were having conversations with members of the community that they live in a trailer park besides Safeway. That they learned that the owner sold the property or was going to sell the property, and at this moment they are really worried and scared of what's going to happen, because it's the only place they can afford to live. Even if this owner is taking advantage of them too, because just to pay $800 for the spot, not for the housing, just for renting that spot in the trailer park, which those are supposed to be low-income housing. So, and these are the concerns of the community, but also the community is afraid. Is afraid to speak up. So we were talking to members of the community that we invited, and many of them were wanting to come, but they are worried. If they know see their faces, they know them, they're going to get punished because of that. So that's why it's important for us to provide a voice to the community, open the space for the community. the city of Hood River is about done. The
If
city,
you could wrap up, thank you.
yeah, the city of Hood River has been working a lot of on these trainings or these practices of diversity, equality, and inclusion. But we want to see an action, not just the trainings. We want to see that diversity, inclusivity is in this town too, in this city, because we depend on our farm work. And it's fair that people need to make money, but not taking advantage of poor people, because that poor people is the one who's paying the price. Thank you.
Thank you for coming, Ubaldo. Appreciate it. Sheriff, we're going to shift things up a little bit and have you present now so that you don't have to learn all about our urban renewal plan.
Been around that a little bit, I think.
Thanks for coming,
Thanks,
Sheriff.
Justin, for his education when he used to work at Wasco County. So nobody likes a quitter. Did I ever tell you?
No, Lane McGill,
Lane
due
McGill,
for class of
1985.
85. We have pictures.
Yeah, we have the pictures. Yeah. Thanks for having me. Lane McGill, Wasco County Sheriff. Co-coordinator of the Columbia Gorge Crisis Resolution Center. I was here probably 16 or 18 months ago and kind of gave a brief update on where it's at. And you guys have, entertained me again. So I just thought I'd give you another update of where it's at. I believe that you guys have been provided this document prior to here. So you've had a little bit of chance to read it and stuff like that. It's a pretty extensive document. It's kind of an ongoing living document where we update it as new things happen. So I mean, even we have our own new letterhead, so it's pretty exciting. We have a statement at the bottom, it's our mission statement and stuff like that. So that's really good to have. We have a full-blown advisory council now. The last time I spoke to the group, we didn't have an advisory council. And you can see the members that are of the advisory council that are listed. I won't go through that. I'm looking for somebody from Hood River County to step up, or Hood River City or something like that to step up, because we'd like to have some more representation from over here. There's some conversations about trying to get Providence involved in some of that stuff, because we all know that mental health, behavioral health, drug and alcohol addiction, dual diagnosis and all that, we know it has no boundaries and no borders. So it's important for us to make sure that we're good partners with you and so on and so forth, because it is a regional project. This isn't just Wasco County, this is Hood River, Wasco, and Sherman, and in some cases, the greater part of Oregon, especially on the east side, rural counties in particular. The thing that's really, really exciting about this whole process well, but before, let me back up. So when we first originally came and spoke to you, there was a pretty big grand master plan about building like one facility and stuff like that. And as we went through the process, we actually learned we legally can't do that. So in Oregon, there's class 1 facilities, which is that's where the most acute individuals that have mental health and behavioral health crisis are held. They're usually put on police officer holds or director's hold through our local CMHP, which is Mid-Columbia Center for Living, and particularly for our region here. Those individuals have to be transported to Unity in Portland. And then you have a class 2 facility, which is a secure residential treatment facility. It's a lower threshold to get people admitted. However, they still need to be admitted into that facility. And then you have a residential treatment facility, and that's long-term housing, long-term care for individuals that are in the system that have mental health, behavioral health, sometimes dual diagnosis, drug and alcohol addiction, different things like that. They need that level of care where they aren't completely back in the community yet, right? And sometimes that's pretty extensive as far as time goes. So in the middle of the RTF and the SRTF have to be separate buildings. Class 1 has to be a separate building as well. They all got to be separated. It can be 5 feet, but they have to be separated. In the middle of the RTF and the SRTF is what we call our crisis walk-in center. And that's the exciting part about this as well, is we'll be able to provide services to anybody 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They can walk in at 3 o'clock in the morning, they get mental health, behavioral health, and drug and alcohol care. It is not a drug and alcohol treatment center, like in-house treatment or anything like that. What it is a stabilization. That way we can get them to treatment wherever they need to go. That is an ultimate goal that I have always had, is to see that we have actual treatment, residential treatment for individuals that have drug and alcohol addictions. I think it's an important part of the process of increasing public safety, but more importantly, creating solutions for individuals that struggle with drug and alcohol addiction. So that's the main components of it. But the exciting part about it is, and I don't know if I reported on it the last time, but So in the last long legislative session, I was able to work with Representative Williams and Representative Smith on a bipartisan thing through the Oregon Lottery, and we requested $4.5 million for the project. And if you remember, originally the project was about 17 to 21 million bucks. So in the last long legislative session, the state ponied up and we got $4.5 million in allocation through the lottery. Those were to be dispersed in March of 2023. That's when this would roll out, because bonds, they have to be bonded out and proofed and all that sort of stuff. Well, during that process, we went through a couple other financial processes and grants, and we did a planning grant stuff to review actual needs for the communities in the region that would primarily be using it. That went back to the state. That opened us up to another pot of money to the tune of about 125 million bucks. And I'm happy to report, as of 2-3 months ago, we got the balance. And the balance, the balance, the total project's $13,983,368. Pretty exciting. That is for the funding to build it. So we're rock solid on getting this thing built, right? We have the land. Wasco County has the land at what we call our Old County shops. It's over at 10th and Walnut Street in the Dalles. And we're in the process right now of actually completing that whole, there's a 3-acre section back in there that we're going to completely clean out. And that's where the SRTF will go there for sure. We're hoping the RTF can go there as well. Construction, how things work, things are pretty tricky. But our ultimate goal is to actually have construction start January 1st of 2024 with full occupancy by July of 2025. So about 2 years from now that's what we're shooting for. Now, this isn't all rainbows and unicorns. Let's just be real. We understand there's contractors and there's permits and there's all this other stuff that we have to go through, but that's our intention and that's what we're shooting for. One of our delays, we were hoping this October we'd be able to break ground and start doing stuff, but we ran into issues with architects and design and all that stuff. They're just backlogged. There's so much construction going on in the region, let alone around the nation for these types of projects, that it's really, really hard to find architects that do that. So they will select, Columbia Care will select a provider, or not a provider, but a construction company by the end of this month, it sounds like. So that's that. Speaking of funding, so one of the things that is being talked about now, we're gonna talk a little bit about it we are going to talk about it in July, is we're looking at other funding streams for the crisis walk-in center. I know the last time that I was here, you asked me about, how's it going to be funded and different things like that. It's a fairly complex process for funding. Residential treatment facilities, pretty rock solid on getting funding. That's through the Oregon Health Authority. Those are state individuals under commitment that go to those facilities. So that's a pretty solid thing. The SRTF side of it, a little bit different, but the tricky part is the crisis walk-in center where we're providing that 24-hour service for individuals on the walk-in. I've personally committed out of my sheriff's office budget $25,000 a year into that to purchase bed space and stuff like that. I don't know if that's going to be enough. I don't know if it's going to be too little, but we figure it's going to run about $900,000 to $1 million a year to run that part of it. Now you have to understand there's some big guns at the table as far as providing money. CCO is our number one. Pacific Source. We know Pacific Sources that provide services in Hood River County through Providence, and as well as tying back into MCMC and stuff like that. I don't know what the numbers are now, but MCMC burns about, or the Pacific Source burns about $1.5 to $2 million a year in the emergency room alone on these types of cases. So there's a lot of impetus for the CCO to step up to the plate and start chucking money at this thing. And there's other things that are in the works and stuff like that. So we'll start having those conversations for budgetary purposes and different things like that, what we're going to need from our partners starting after the 4th of July. I think we have a meeting on the 6th or 7th of July. So that's pretty exciting. We've got a lot of people that are at the table and stuff like that. Backing up just a little bit, and this has just come up fairly recently, and I just noted it in this future construction and development. I'm sure all of you have heard about the Kramer Field MCMC project. So one of the conversations is to get that moved out to Kramer Field and talking about affordable housing and stuff like that. I appreciate that conversation because we see that in Wasco County, so I feel your pain here in Hood River County as well as nationwide, quite frankly. But one of the things that we're really kind of got to thinking about is originally when this got all kind of designed out, we only thought we had about 2 acres to put this on. Well, come to find out, there's a piece of pie in there of that property that Wasco County owns that's 7.3 acres. So a couple of us, me namely, I guess, went to Dennis Knox at MCMC, and originally in the plan, they were going to put Celilo Cancer Center kind of where our stuff's at, and then the behavioral health unit, they actually designed and put in a 16-bed, 30,000 square foot BHU, a class 1 facility, the unity of what we're talking about, right? And they actually put that on the other side over by the old Dal's Armory and Burger King in there. So I went to Dennis and I said, hey, what do you think about flip-flopping those, and let's get this on this 7.3 acres, and we'll have a class 1, class 2, and class 3 facility, and let's get Center for Living on board and get another 10 or 12,000 foot and move their entire operations division and build a whole mental behavioral health campus. They bid. So we're in the process of developing a master plan for that 7.3 acres so we can actually have a full-blown mental health, behavioral health, drug and alcohol campus. That's the ultimate dream, if you want to call it that. I don't really have too many other things to add to it. I think it's pretty self-explanatory. There were some adjustments on bed size the last time I talked to you. I tried to find the old report that I provided you, but I couldn't find it. But just so everybody knows, the RTF will be 16 beds, the SRTF will be 16 beds, and the walk-in crisis will be 10, what we call recliners. Understand the crisis walk-in, an individual can only stay there for up to 23 hours. Well, they call it technically 24 hours. But what happens is once you go past the 24-hour mark on a walk-in crisis center, it becomes a medical facility. So what happens is people have to leave after that. So it may be the type of thing where some people will actually go out the back door and come in the front door again, type of a thing, you know, we understand that. But interestingly enough, statistics show that when people have a walk-in crisis center and they can get in there and get stabilized, we can get them stabilized within that 23-hour window. And then we can consider that hub, and we'll continue to run them out in those spokes. So that's our model, our hub and spoke models. Navigation center is part of that. College is part of that. Affordable housing is a part of that conversation. There's a lot of spokes that come out. District attorney's office, jails, law enforcement. The ultimate goal is community restoration for our community members, getting them back into their homes, being productive members of their community, and paying taxes and jobs and doing that sort of stuff. With
Thank you,
that,
Sam.
that's a fast rundown there.
Thank you
If you
so
got
much.
questions, I'd be happy to answer.
If you ever decide to hang up the badge, I think you've got a future in lobbying. You're very
Yeah,
successful.
you know, somebody told me that, and it had to do with politics, and I just thought maybe I might be an alcoholic after that. No, I'm kidding. No, that's not. My job is to.
Great, congratulations for all the success.
Yeah.
Questions for the sheriff?
No question, just a comment. Thank you for your leadership. I know that this is something that you've been working on for a number of years. Thank you for continuing to stay connected with the community partners. I think having CCO, specific source, Providence at the table, right? This is a big regional approach that they're trying to work with. So continue working with those individuals to get some of what you need. What do you need from us as a council to continue supporting your efforts moving forward?
I think in my mind is just keeping the information in front of our citizens, those that are specifically in need, but I think keeping that information and this information in front of the people that can contribute to it. I mean, I think that's a really, really important key, let's be real about it. It takes money to run these things. There's no two ways about it, but having them at the table like Providence, like you said, and our CCO, those are super important. We have full buy-in from MCMC, they're at the table. We actually have representation from MCMC on our advisory council as well. So keeping the information out. And I think the other thing is ask the questions, because I could go on for another hour on with the hub and spoke and community restoration, restorative jet, all that sort of stuff that can fit in this, but I won't do that. So keep it in front of them.
I think the other piece that's also really important to keep in mind is how are all of these agencies going to communicate once a patient, a client is in the system? How are they going to communicate those pieces back and forth?
You mean as far as just what we call that continuum of care? Yeah, great question. So like I said, think about this as this hub and spoke model, right? So thinks crisis stabilization. That's really that hub, right? Once we create that hub and we can get somebody stabilized, then I talk about these spokes, right? And these spokes, they'll all communicate to this hub. And we're all going to be interconnected, you know. Now there's the whole medical side of the stuff through Epic and all that sort of stuff that we get that. Because remember the last time I was here, I talked about it, you know, Hood River County, 10% of your population. So you have what, 26,000 people that live here, is that right?
In the county, yeah.
In the county, totally in the county, right? 10% of your population are clearly, they're diagnosed with mental illness. That's the ones that you all know about and I know about. That doesn't include the ones we don't, right? So, and Wasco County is the same way. We're right at 10%. So being able to get people into that hub, get them stabilized and have all those connections that we're doing right now, and then build them spokes off that hub and then continue that. Affordable housing is a great conversation. I appreciate what this gentleman said, because get them down that spoke, get them the navigation center, continue the housing process, work on getting them back into it. So it's a very effective tool, and that's how we're approaching it. So. Anything else?
Thanks again, Sheriff.
Thanks for having me. I'm more than happy to ask some more.
You will.
Give me a call if you have any questions. So, great. Thank you very much. Have a great night.
I noticed that a number of folks came in just after the time from business from the audience. I don't know if you guys want to speak to us. Me gustaría que ustedes pueden hablar con su city council si quiere. No conoce ustedes, pero cada persona puede hablar si quiere. Would anybody like to speak? ¿Alguna quiere hablar con nosotros? No, it's okay. Esteban. If you could keep it under 3 minutes, that'd be great.
Hello, my name is Esteban Ortiz. I'm the Programs and Development Coordinator for Comunidades here in Hood River. And we're the ones that we're working with some of the residents here from the trailer park here on Cascade Avenue. And just like the sheriff mentioned, the big thing, I think, as you can see, a lot of most of the majority of the residents are Latino. And the big thing of the Latino community that they become aware of, they mentioned, is like the sheriff mentioned, like the drug use that's happening there at the trailer park by most of these people that are transient or that did not live in the community. That's one of their worries, how to address those issues, right, about these people from the drug use. And the biggest thing that I think that we're also hoping for is having them for like rent control that happens, in place, I think, as a person that's moved to this area recently, for the job, that's the biggest thing is how do you keep this, and more than anything, these working families and these families that are part of the community, and what are those values of the Hood River community, right? What is it that's gonna, value them as family members, contributing members, and more than anything, members of the city? And hopefully, not to get into, that's the biggest thing, and then hopefully that's a big, finding a solution, because I think that's a big place that most of them been living here for like 10, 20 years or longer. So hopefully that's a big thing that's considered, and hopefully there's gonna come to a solution that can happen, because at this point, they're just not unaware of what's happening with the new owners or what's the issue with the trailer park. And then, of course, what's gonna happen with, with the current status of the trailer park.
Thank you. So council knows Esteban and Ubaldo brought this to my attention last week. I've already spoken to the governor's office and to the housing authority, and folks are engaged in trying to figure out what is happening and what can be done. So it's not quite what we do, but I know people and have engaged folks. Esteban, could you ask anybody if they would like to speak to us?
Quisiera decir unas palabras, unos comentarios sobre el asunto.
Buenas tardes, mi nombre es María Espinosa.
Buenas tardes, gracias por venir.
Gracias, soy una madre de 5 niños que, nacieron en otro estado, ¿verdad? Pero estamos residiendo hace 11 años aquí en las trailas, como nosotros le llamamos, y pedimos de su colaboración, de su ayuda, porque es un espacio donde nosotros pues ya tenemos ahí tiempo y queremos saber y si pueden y si estén sus posibilidades en sus manos, ayudarnos a manos para que no nos quiten, nos saquen, como ha sucedido en las trailas anteriores. Entonces, tal vez no somos de las personas de alta sociedad, ¿verdad? Somos bajos, pero pedimos de su ayuda porque pues somos muchas familias las que estamos allí y pues nosotros no podemos hacer mucho o nada. Sin su ayuda no podemos mover nada, así es que les pedimos de favor, de todo corazón, si podrían ayudarnos y pues a resolver esta situación que para todos es importante. Y muchas gracias por su apoyo y por escucharnos. Gracias.
Gracias por venir.
I realize this is kind of an awkward situation. We don't have like robust interpretation services, but we're doing our best here.
Can I just take a quick moment to
Please, go ahead.
thank folks? I know that we don't usually do this, pero quiero tomar el tiempo para agradecerles a todos ustedes que han venido aquí. Es importante que ustedes vengan y que hablen sobre cualquier problema que están teniendo. Entonces, gracias por venir. Reconozco que toma mucho tiempo y coordinación de su día. Quizás están faltando oportunidades de sus segundos, tercer trabajos. Gracias por venir y vamos a hacer todo lo posible que podamos para poder ayudarlos en esta situación. Y por favor, en cualquier momento que necesiten algo, están bienvenidos a venir aquí y simplemente a expresarse y nosotros vamos a hacer todo lo posible para poder apoyarlos. Gracias.
Okay, I think we're going to move on. Thank you for coming. Where are we, Mark? Is it early? All right, I will now recess the city council and hand it over to Chair Zan Miller to begin the Urban Renewal Agency meeting.
And this is the Urban Renewal Agency meeting for June 12th. We have a nice handful of stuff to go over. Dustin and Chris, any agenda items? I think there's at least that one.
Yes, we do have an agenda addition now that Abigail's not here. We have one request for a resolution. It's 20-023 URA-3. This is a resolution authorizing the use of contingency funds previously allocated for the budget for this year. We have some specific uses that we would like to authorize. So we've asked this to be placed on the agenda to be handled prior to the end of the fiscal year being July 1st.
So could it just go number 4 in the regular business thing?
That'd be great.
Or do you need to move it up for you?
No, just before July.
Okay, cool. Business from the audience. Arthur, you signed up to talk to the Urban Renewal Agency?
It would make sense for me to speak after explaining everything.
And this is, it's not due to the, it's not for the adoption of the budget, I assume. It's for the West Side plan. Yeah, right. I guess question to council is, should we do a little public, I mean, it makes sense to do public input as part of the urban renewal, West Side development stuff. So, all right, we'll do it that way. That sounds good. Do we have Christy and Heather? Are you guys on?
Yeah.
Okay, well, good evening. Okay, so we're gonna, is there anyone else that would like to speak to the Urban Renewal Agency about stuff not otherwise on the agenda? Okay, seeing none of that. The next thing is consent agenda. We have two meetings of minutes. What do we got?
I will move, we approve the consent agenda.
All right, Megan made a motion.
I'll second.
Gladys, I'll vote her way in for the second. Any other discussion?
Just to clarify, it's including our contingency budget items, no, later, okay,
Yeah, I don't think so, no.
all right, thanks.
All in favor of the approving the consent agenda?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, I hear all ayes and the chair says yes as well. So that passes. Public hearing. Chris and Dustin, do you have anything before we do the script thing or?
Nothing to add.
Okay, is there going to be a staff presentation as part of it or we're just opening it?
No, just have it.
And then a motion kind of thing?
Yep.
Okay. All right. This is a public hearing for fiscal year 2023-2024 approved budget. This is the time scheduled for a public hearing regarding the approved budget for 23-24 for the Hood River Urban Renewal Agency. We'll now take public testimony. City Recorder, has anyone signed up to speak or provided written testimony? Is anyone online raising their hands?
No one's online.
Okay, no one's online. And does anyone in the audience want to speak to the URA about the approved budget? Okay, seeing none, we can go straight to B, which says the public hearing on the fiscal year 23-24 budget is now closed. That's pretty simple, huh? So now I think there should be a motion here for the adoption of the resolution 2023 URA 02, adopting the budget for the 23-24 year.
I move to adopt resolution 2023 URA-02, adopting the budget for the fiscal year 2023-24.
All right, Tim made a motion and Paul seconded. Jen, is this going to be one of the, we pass this and then there's a roll call thing? This is it, one and done. Okay. Any other discussions on that motion?
Oh, I'd like to understand a little bit more about this new piece we just got from Chris. Is this something we wish to incorporate, or what's the relationship of this motion to this recent memo, Chris?
So the motion in front of you now is for the fiscal 2023-24 year.
Yes.
And then the other resolution is for the current fiscal year. It's the allocation of the budget. So
It's the piece that we added to the last item on the something.
Thank you. I understand.
All right, I don't see anything else. Was that something from the ether? Oh, okay. That's awesome. Awesome sound, actually. Okay, all in favor of the resolution 2023 URA 02? Say yes.
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 Aye.
Yes.
Any abstentions? Any nays? Chair votes yes, the budget is approved, adopted, approved. Cool. What else? What's next? There's a nice thing about having a printout of the agenda in addition to it being on the iPad. So we did that. Regular business items. The first thing is McKed Workforce Housing IGA. Dustin?
Thank you, Chair. We have with us tonight Jessica Maddox, who is the Executive Director for McKed. And the item you have before you is a request for some input from the agency for the agency to enter into an IGA with McKed to provide affordable housing funds to provide some bridge financing for a housing project in the Heights Renewal District. One of the goals of that district, goal 7 to be exact, was to promote housing within the district, and it directs the agency to work with property owners, not-for-profits to promote the development of housing, to assist in the finance of housing, or provide transportation infrastructure improvements to support the development of housing. And really, this is one of the first opportunities for vertical housing development within the Heights. The project that we're looking at has been approved. It's been through land use in 2021, and currently the owner has been investigating financing, which has changed the environment, and lending environment has changed since 2020 in its first inception. He has been approved or has looked and worked with McKed regarding some of their attainable and workforce housing program. The agency is being asked to consider partnering with McKed, their current infrastructure, to help fund a bridge loan, kind of the last money in finance to see this project from its current status to construction. So what you have in your packet are some details regarding the house or the project itself, along with some a term sheet for an IGA. This is not the IGA. We're not asking you to approve the IGA. We're asking you to look at generally the concept of participation. This is relatively novel, not for urban renewal agencies, but for this urban renewal agency to have direct partnership in a housing project. McKed has financed housing here before. Your Clearwater Lane development, which just went in, was supported by McKed in this program. So it's not the first time this program has been used here, but it's the first time that the agency has been requested to participate. So the terms of the agreement, again, are really draft terms. They're to provide you some of the areas that we would look at in terms of what are the terms of the loan, assurances that we are repaid, at what term, at what time. And that would be further developed over time. But again, this is an opportunity for the agency to weigh in. Are you interested in participating? Should we invest our time and energy refining the terms to see this happen? And if you have any questions for us or direction early on prior to that additional work.
So for the ask for today is to ask questions and give you a feeling for where the agency is, so you can keep going. Is that true?
That's correct.
Provide direction, it says in the text.
Fine. Cool. Is McKed or the developer want to say anything, or?
I think they were here for questions. And
Right.
for your benefit, if you had questions of them, that I would need to yield to the subject matter experts over there and their respective agencies and interest. I would not want to speak on their behalf.
Okay, fair enough. I guess let's just go around the agency horn and see where people's heads are at. Does that feel okay? Doug, do you want to start? Just go around that way.
Sure, I'll just open up by saying that I think that if we're talking about creative ways in which to align to the goals of our community to secure workforce, quote unquote, housing, and to be able to direct, the agency to work with McKed to do that, I think it's something definitely worth our time exploring. And I'm happy to say that I would approve that staff continue and draft up an IGA for that personally.
You just talk about the fiscal impact associated with this.
So the budget, and we'll just kind of break this down from high to low. The maximum indebtedness considered for the Heights district is about $8.5 million. So based upon what, and this is going to come up as a reoccurring theme, based upon the forecast of investment and renewal and the growth of that increment, how much would the city or the agency be able to allocate in terms of expenditures? This request, the gap that's been identified is $2 million. We are hoping that the agency goes 50-50 partners, so have $1 million of loan. It is a repayment, so this is not a giveaway. The loan, I think, looks like it has a 25-year term with a 10-year reassessment. It has interest. It will be paid back. What we expect right away is day one, we expect this development to absorb about $400,000 of localized fees, permit fees, system development charges, $150,000 to the Parks District. So, what we see is half the loan pledged approximately will be immediately returned to the taxing bodies. In addition, we expect, and this is a rough estimate, I would expect an annual $30,000 payout in annual taxes that would go back to the agency every year. And this development would represent the single largest investment in private development within the short 10-year term of the urban renewal district. So it pays out in a couple of ways. It pays on an annual tax as a private development into the agency. It pays immediate fees to the taxing bodies and system development for parks, school, transportation funds. It provides parking, which is one of the goals of the district. Although for an increased demand, it does provide that. And for opportunities, we currently don't have anything that is ready that would have to be pushed. the size and scale and magnitude of the streetscape project, which has really been the dominating conversation in the Heights. We're expecting that to need some financing and consideration well beyond the means of the district. A $30 million project will not be sacrificed because we loaned out $1 million. So in terms of opportunity, we'll be looking for those funds, but I don't see anything getting bumped. And that's the quick high level breakdown of some of the numbers we're throwing at you.
Thank you so much. I guess just one more question. What about the timing? The question for you is.
I think we expect favorable terms would result in April or spring construction.
Is that the timeline you were, the question you asked?
Yeah. Thank you. No, this will be a good option.
Thank you, Dustin. You asked part of my question, and you might have touched on this, but so financially, it's a loan that's getting paid back, so we're not losing any maximum indebtedness. But if it's a 10 to 25 year payback, do we delay? I mean, we've been working for a number of years on the Heights stuff. Do we cause delays there? Some sort of issue with that large scale plan because this money has been loaned out?
Yeah, I don't see it as a headroom issue since it's being paid back. I think the bigger issue is going to be financing in excess of $25 million. And what other vehicles do we need to figure that out? Support of a bond, really the most likely candidate. And that kind of falls outside the MI that really starts drawing into a bigger pool. So I don't see like a compression issue here to where all of a sudden we've authorized this and we have no payback. But the life of the district and the life of the payback, you know, are on par with each other too.
Okay, then yeah, I'm agreeing with other folks. I mean, we've been trying so hard to get multifamily dense development in the city, and this is a huge opportunity for us to, you know, put our mouth or put our feet where our mouth. I don't know what the word is. actually really work to get it done.
Oh, yeah.
I'm excited about all the partners involved in this. It's a bunch of different things have come together to create exactly what we are hoping to achieve. So onward.
Yeah, I too welcome this opportunity, excited about it. I think that we're not going to be losing any money. I think it's also creating a process that we could hopefully replicate and have other individuals that have, you know, everything needed in order to continue collaborating and working with us as a city so that we can create more housing. My question, I believe would be more targeted towards Maui is, what is the process going to look like for an individual once they're trying to apply? So for example, in affordable housing through the Mid-Columbia Housing Authority, I understand that process well. So help me understand the consumer experience in order to be able to apply.
Please name address for the record.
Good evening, Councilman Rivera. Maui Meyer, 1002 Oak Street. I am one half of the partnership that includes my business partner Ben Stan, who's here as well tonight. I don't know. It's a private project. We are longstanding community members. I would envision that there would be some sort of screening associated with that, but our goal is to build a project that is serves the workforce that we are in and the Heights is in. And it's only 30 units at the end of the day. It's not a, we need to do this 5 or 6 more times. But I know that at the far end of that and the first full occupancy and probably the first turn, I'll probably have a pretty solid playbook of how it will go down and serve the needs of the community while still sort of accomplishing what we need to do for the community.
Is there another partner that you're potentially looking to collaborate with to help fill the housing that's there? For example, I know that in the past, you and I have had a conversation around Providence employees and how they have, you know, unable to house nurses and whatnot. Is something like that?
I think by proximity, because you could literally throw a ball from the top floor and it would hit the hospital, that would matter. You can hit 30% of the businesses in the Heights district from the top floor as well as the school. I would envision it would encompass all of those people. But we'll see. I believe there'll be a complete spectrum because of the size of the units. They're 1 bedroom and 2 bedrooms only. There's no studios involved, and there are only 2 units that are kind of by their design were forced out of the 120% cap. So 28 of the units will be within the 120% cap, and in the aggregate, it's about, I think, in the math, it was right around 110 and 112. I'd like it to be lower if we could pull it off. We might, don't know. I don't know. Yeah. Sorry, I wish I could be more specific. Very, very, very early days. Great. Should I stay up here?
Thanks, Don. Okay, sit for you. Great. I was curious on how the interest rate of this proposed loan is calculated on our end.
It is, I believe we had some MCED terms. It is intentionally below market rate because it advances 1-year urban renewal goals. So conventional lending at par would be available through a lender. We're looking to have this be less. So I would expect it to be half market rate at 8%.
So when this was concepted by myself and Dustin, we were talking about, well, what would make it work? And a couple things did make it work that are relevant and that are germane. One is the rate, and the other is the bank commitment. But really, there's also the subordination of this loan to the primary lender, who's going to be the first money in. I have not received commitments because it's still all very conceptual. But the 2 lending partners, one of whom we've been working with for 25 years, the other is a relative newcomer. Both we passed the first screen, which is, hey, this rate, these terms, am I crazy? And the answer is absolutely not. Very interested and want to do it. This is a very peculiar time that we find ourselves in because this is not normal. It's a risky project. It's a risky project for us. It is a challenging project for the entity as well as the lender, the first money in, which would be a bank. And it seems that everybody's really excited because, as you know, we've been talking about these issues for a really, really long time. We're the only project that's sitting at construction documents ready to go. And we were happy to sit for another decade if we needed it. And because of Dustin's good work and Chris's good work and the enthusiasm of Jessica, kind of it's starting to roll there. I'm excited. Is that
Kind of.
okay? Keep going.
I understand the mortgage being a secondary position. If for whatever reason the construction goes go through the building defaults, et cetera, your bank will be made whole first, second, or whenever.
Sure.
So since we would be charging a lower interest rate, fixed rate, I assume.
Fixed.
We would be shouldering any inflation adjustment hedge, inflation hedge, et cetera, having to go with committing to a 25-year fixed rate at below half.
It's not a 10-year reassessment. The way I had envisioned it, it's a 10-year term. It shuts down after 10 years.
Okay.
We'd have to roll out. The goal, my traditional work when we worked with MCED is to try to, they're 5-year, right? They don't like to lend that money out for very long. The goal is always to try to pay that off. I think we've made verbal commitments that we would try to work from second position out, right? So work the agencies out first. But we have to get it up, we have to put a lid on it, we have to rent it. There's a lot of steps. There's a lot of steps.
Yeah, I understand. Dustin, you mentioned earlier, it's 25 years. Is that the term and a balloon payment or?
It's a 10-year term, 25-year AM.
Oh, okay. Okay, thanks. Yeah. Thanks, Mike. Heather, do you have any comments or questions?
Hi. Well, Justin said it's a pretty novel adventure for URA. I was wondering, does it set a certain precedent for other private developers to come through URA and how we could vet out future projects. And also, if URA is involved in loaning money, does there need to be any sort of community participation or involvement in the decision?
Mr. Chair?
Do you go, please?
Yeah, so I think the part of the public, I'm going to start with the public participation part because that's first and foremost. And actually this does take into account the precedent. We're going to go back to the Urban Renewal Agency plan, a plan that was vetted through public hearing, public process, and the goals of that plan. So, you know, I think this is where we get back to the public's voice being embedded in this when we have a housing goal directly in there and a direction for incentive. So I think I wouldn't say this project creates any precedent. I think the precedent and the ask has been put out by the agency in its own plan by saying we are going to incentivize and insist in finance, and the quote is assist in the financing and provision of transportation infrastructure improvements and work with property owners for the development of the housing. I think that's and provide publicly funded programs for the improvement of properties. I think this is pretty explicit that the shield has been put out by the agency requesting these type of activities. So in terms of precedents, yes, you've set the precedent in your goal. I think this is someone taking you up on it. And in terms of public participation, absolutely. The plan itself should represent the will of the public. So we should be finding that this is consistent with the plan. I think that's my ask.
Heather, did that hit on questions you had?
Yes, thank you, Dustin.
Anything else?
Nothing from me.
Christy.
Hi. I have a couple of things. I am a little concerned about the rate that Grant brought up because of inflation and all of that, but I understand that this is a draft and these are the devils in the details that need to still be vetted and worked out. So I can see past that at this point. To Gladys's comment, I do agree that, you know, I think that we need to really make sure that we as a city and as a urban renewal, if we're going to be involved in a project that's supposed to help promote affordable housing, that there needs to be some sort of guarantee that this is going to stay as affordable housing or as workforce housing, I should call it. And is there an ability for us to do a deed restriction on the property so that if it changes hands, I've seen this happen in the past where, you know, someone commits to saying this is going to be workforce housing and then they sell the project and then all of a sudden the new owner says, well, I didn't agree to those terms. So I would like to make sure that we put some teeth into this and say, you know, if we're going to be giving a very low interest rate loan, the guarantee is that you're going to keep the rents and everything lower. And then my last piece, which is a question, is have other developers come to Dustin or the Planning Commission or anyone in the past and asked for assistance with building? I know, Dustin, you mentioned that, you know, part of the plan says assistance with roads and infrastructure. And how are we going to kind of pick and choose who we move forward with these potential agreements and who we do not? I listened to a city council meeting that was a few weeks ago, and there was one person that did make a public comment basically stating that there was potentially another developer interested in doing something similar with urban renewal dollars. And so how do we do that process so that it's fair?
Dustin, can you guys speak to the assurances of the affordability? I think that one is a little more concrete. Does that seem okay, Christy?
Absolutely, yeah.
So this is part of this is, the intent of using the IGA with MCED, not direct to developer, is MCED has some standards and infrastructure already in place around lending practices and insurance. And if I get it wrong, please jump in. As part of the term in their lending is an assurance that these units will stay below 120 or some portion thereof. That's why we put in here, you have 28 out of 30 are below 120%. We wanted to be explicit about that. And we've had projects here that had to be reined in to maintain their part of the bargain during the point of when that term and that money is out there, that they've had to suppress their loans. And there's people who have borrowed money who couldn't make that number work, and they had to give that money back. So part of that MCED infrastructure that is in place really helps ensure that that last money in stays true to the intent until it comes back. So during the life of the loan, I think we expect that we will abide by the 120. The project at large is 112 at this point estimate. I think that's something that would be written into the charters.
Christy, did I cut you off? Is there any?
Can I, while we're on that topic, can I?
Yeah, as soon as she's either done with her initial comments and then to you, that's good.
No, that's helpful. I just want to make sure that that's on the forefront of everyone protecting this project for the city and for the users. So, but that being said, after the loan theoretically is paid back to the urban renewal, then, and if they don't have any indebtedness to MCED, then at that point it's all bets are off and it can turn into whatever the owners want, or how does, that's the piece that I'm talking about.
I think that's the deal, but go ahead.
That would be in terms, I presume that is the deal.
Yeah.
I think from our perspective, a senior lender would be very hesitant to cap its return on its major money, especially when the funds that we've dedicated are no longer there. However, I think that was our assumption, is that over the life of our loan in term, it would be there. After that money is out, we no longer have that leverage.
And Jessica from MCED nodded her head, so that similar for the MCED funding. Molly, please.
So to be clear, because as part of the planning approval process, short-term rentals are not allowed in that building. That we've long since discarded with that. But I'm not quite sure I can tell you exactly how aggressive these numbers are. The rents, even at 112, this is tough. This is a tough nut to crack. These are really high rents, and it just barely makes the project work. I personally should we warrant it post the loan coming back? No, you're not equity partners. Wouldn't generally do that. Would we consider it? Yeah. Do the mechanics of 120% of AMI make it virtually impossible for people to even pay at 120? That's $2,200 a month, $2,400 a month for a 2-bedroom. It's a lot of money. I'm sorry. I of a different generation. I look at $1,300 and I think, how can anybody pay that? That's where I'm at. So somewhere responding to Christie's comments, there's a reconciliation in that, and we're open to it. But honestly, I think the market's going to not let it happen anyway.
Well, we're drawing this box, right?
Yeah.
Megan, did you want to jump in there?
I was just gonna maybe ask Jessica if she could talk about how MCED, what their sideboards are and how they check up on their lendees.
Thank you. So yes, Jessica Meta, 651 Floral Place in Hood River. And Dustin was right. It's just while the loan is in payment, it's 120% max. Once a year, we update those figures based on numbers that we get from the state. I just did that today, actually, for the 2023. Mostly we just kind of keep an eye on rental listings, and in the past have had to reach out to folks, for example, and say, hey, this is a little too high, we need to ratchet it down. So that's what it's been. And we don't have a huge portfolio in this, so that's worked.
I'm gonna take Mark's turn real quick. So just hitting on a couple things that were said, we did add housing to the Heights urban renewal area, and I think that this is the idea, right? If we can facilitate private development of 120 and below housing, we should. And to that, and I think this is a piece in our toolkit, and it's not just for these guys, it's for hopefully this is an incentive for other people to come and us to try to put together a similar package for similar projects. Like Maui said, there should be 5 more right on the heels if we're doing this right. So I think that's good. We answered my questions about assurances of the 120%. That's great. I had a question about what happens if we close the district before, I guess we're not going to close the district in 10 years for sure.
I think there would be some amazing revelations if we are closing the district within 10 years, given we're 10 years in and we're about $1 million and we're only accruing more expenses that I would expect.
Let's go. What are you talking? It would be neat if the agreement had if the district closes, what happens thing to me. Hopefully it's a non-issue, like you said, but I would look for something like that. Toolbox. That's everything I had. I like this kind of stuff. Paul.
Maui, I appreciate your comment about a different era in 1300 and 2400. And I guess I would just remind us all that if we do nothing, then it's 3000. So it's an improvement.
Any other, I think we're close to giving you good sounding board stuff. Is there questions from staff that we didn't touch on that you're curious about? Okay. Anyone else?
Can I raise my hand real quick here? My one question didn't get answered of listening to the public comment in a couple city council meetings ago. It sounds like there was another developer that had a similar ask, and I'm just curious, how is this vetted? Why? And I understand that Maui might be closer to being shovel ready, and that might be the reason that this conversation is happening with him first. But I'm just curious to know how are we picking the developers that we want to choose to work with?
Christy, was this about a West Side project from a couple meetings ago?
I'm not sure where the location was, no, but I just listened to the recording and there was a discussion of that a developer made a request for some improvements to some roads and.
Yeah.
Was it Claudia Von Floto's comment?
Yes.
That was.
Okay, so that's in a district that doesn't exist yet. But
Okay,
we'll
that's my question is that, I just want us to all be cognizant of, how we're vetting things and how we're picking and choosing the developers that we're choosing to work with.
I would argue that we're not choosing them. They're using a tool that we are incented to put together to get the kind of outcome that we want, which is housing. So I hope we have other developers coming and saying, hey, how can we build 28 more units of 120% below?
No pressure, Maui. No pressure to make it work.
Paul, again.
Christy, I guess my hope and my sense is that the alignment with the agency's goals would be the criteria we use to pick and choose.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
I don't see any other hands raised. Heather, you're good?
Yeah, I'm good. I could just make a quick comment that I had a gentleman at my house that told me he was paying the same amount for a small trailer that I pay for my mortgage. And I just felt so terrible about that. And I'm excited to see some affordable housing getting started.
Yeah, here, for sure. Here. All right, Dustin, I think we've covered this item on the agenda.
We have a direction to proceed. That'd be a great motion to hit official sanction.
Mr. Chair, I move that we request staff to continue to proceed with this.
I'll second.
Motion by Paul and a second by Gladys to direct staff to continue investigation of this creative financing to get much needed housing. So all in favor, say yes.
Aye.
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 Hi.
All right, and chair votes aye. We're good to go. Okay, next is the West Side Urban Renewal Plan and Report. Dustin and Elaine. And then what we'll do is we'll get the staff report and then we'll open it up for public comment.
Mark, I want to apologize for interrupting. I have to hop off this meeting. I have to go pick up my daughter and to deal with a little bit of an emergency. But I just wanted to really thank everyone. I know you're about to
Gracias
get
por venir.
information.
Gracias por venir. Gracias por venir. Gracias por venir.
Hold on 2 seconds, but just because the folks are leaving and we're just.
Oh,
saying-
I apologize. I didn't see him leaving.
Okay. You have to split.
I have to split, but I just want to thank everyone for everything that they've done with this West Side Renewal Plan and the Waterfront District. And I believe it's a great win-win. And so I just wanted to give my thumbs up on everything and everyone's hard work. And thank you, everyone.
Awesome, thanks.
Okay.
Okay, you guys are.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna have to do. We're gonna have to share the stage here because I can't move it over there. I think there's. Oh, no, I should be behind you. Are we?
All right, the curtain has been pulled back.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a presentation we made a couple times to a couple different agencies. Also a presentation that we provided a public open house. Part of your ask tonight is to review this plan. This is a draft plan you have before you with the West Side proposed West Side Urban Renewal Plan. And part of the ask of the agency is to send this plan to taxing districts to be reviewed before the Planning Commission and once again before City Council prior to its adoption. So again, as a draft, this is not the final plan. It is subject to change. But tonight, here's an opportunity for us to present this really as developed to this point in draft form. We have a couple guest speakers on, but at first we're going to just kind of give you an overview. I know you all have heard this and you maybe as opposed to subject matter experts as any of your peers, but for those chiming in and reviewing, part of the principles for the implementation of this plan, the review of equity and some of the projects are highlighted to ensure that we have the opportunity for those joining in and caring to listen, have the opportunity to understand what's going on. Some of the principles that we looked at in terms of equity, and this is the first slide that really comes up, is to be clear and transparent, really to allow this vision to be shared by the community so that we can be to express the will and intent, kind of like the actual the ask last time, to make sure that the voice of the people and the public interest is represented here. So when we follow through, we have the opportunity to use this as really to justify the expenditure of public funds. The commitment to equity also looks at the idea of who is benefited by this project, who is harmed by this project, and opportunities to try to mitigate that. Not only generational equity, income equity, social economic equity is all evaluated in the plan. and really to commit to this to the long term. You know, this change begins now. Its impacts have repercussions and benefits that extend throughout time. So understanding some of that generational equity is very important. I think this is where I get to hand it off to our subject matter expert here, Elaine Howard, who is in person. It's nice to.
I had a busy night tonight, I'm sorry, but I'm here. So the overview of what we'll go through tonight is the role of the agency, the preliminary West Side District concept, the district size, possible projects and financing, and what the next steps is and how to provide input. So so the role of an urban renewal agency in any new proposed urban renewal plan is to review the plan and report and decide whether to send it out for formal public review. So the statute says an agency will present the plan. So it starts with you. That public review is, like Dustin said, it is sending it out, a copy of the plan and the report, to all of the different impacted taxing districts, to the planning, going to the planning commission for review of conformance to the comprehensive plan, to the county commission, both for a briefing where we have to identify the maximum indebtedness, but in this case, the county also has to vote approval of the plan because of unincorporated properties within the plan area. And then a hearing by city council in consideration of a non-emergency ordinance. A non-emergency ordinance does not take effect for 30 days after adoption. When this is sent to the taxing districts, they have a statutory 45 days to provide written comments. If they do provide written comments, those comments must be either accepted, rejected, or modified in the actual ordinance that adopts the urban renewal plan, if you so adopt. And then I did say the county commission also must approve, and it's actually, they approve the plan, they don't adopt the plan. Want me to do this, or I think it's yours for a bit. Nah.
Did the boss write my name on here? She didn't. Oh, she left it to you.
Oh, this is the West Side District. You can see by the large parcel sizes that much of it is undeveloped or underdeveloped. And the goal within this area is to provide the necessary infrastructure to make those properties within that area actually develop, and to provide those, the housing and the other commercial services that you're looking for within the district. So the district obviously is on the west side and takes in a large swath of unincorporated properties. It does cross over I-84 and takes some of those properties on the north side of I-84 and goes up Cascade Avenue 60. I can't see it on there on the slide. Out, yeah, Highway 30 towards downtown. So it encompasses large swaths in the west side and then that commercial strip as it goes down towards town. Do you want to add anything to that?
No, that's great. I think I get to go next though.
All right, there you go.
So as we've discussed, the plan is really born from a couple existing plans on the books. You know, starting off in 2015 with the buildable lands inventory and housing needs analysis, the west side became identified as the natural expansion of the city's buildable area, with the vast majority of the greenfield growth occurring there. From that, the city began to develop its what we call the supporting or background documents of its comp plan, the transportation system plan, which was modified in 2021, and that included a number of projects that really came out of some of that west side investigation. The need for additional infrastructure for streets, Cascade Avenue developments, the limitations of exit 62, some of the key intersection improvements that were going to be necessary to anticipate and handle and provide the adequate public facilities for future growth in the area anticipated to come. It also included a number of projects that started spilling over into the parks analysis. We identified 3 particular trails a number of park areas that were incorporated into a parks plan for all, which was a multi-jurisdictional master plan for parks and open space. So the projects for active transportation trail system started blending into that parks needs analysis. And then finally, last year, the city of Hood River completed its affordable housing strategy, specifically looking at some of the tools that could be used to finance and overcome some of the obstacles to see affordable housing built, one of those being urban renewal. The need to preserve its housing stock already in place, the need to preserve naturally occurring or affordable housing, and the abilities for urban renewal by statute to help fund and assist in the development of housing. Not like Rand Road being an example, which we'll start looking at as an example, the agency's power to acquire property, to finance property, and to use that taxpaying money to fulfill some of its goals. These are really the hallmark projects that this is built upon. Each of these projects is important because they all had a community engagement component, focus groups, online surveys, affordable housing. Ubaldo is actually one of the members there of that task force to represent different parts of the agency. Each of these pieces has had a pretty robust public input session, and it's important to acknowledge that because this project is not reinventing the wheel. It's really providing a financing mechanism to see some of these projects we have asked people to participate in and provide their voices to see it become reality. However, we do have some community engagement components to this to ensure that we are, again, consistently giving folks the opportunity to weigh in, to understand what's happening, and to ensure that we are staying true to what we've heard before. Again, this project is not to overwrite the work of the past that's been done, but provide an opportunity to see it become reality. So as we go through the process, we want people to engage and say, listen, this is not what we participated in before. This is something that is being left off, or these are some of our priorities, and we see them reflected in this plan. We want affirmation that this plan is a reflection of the work that's been done in the past. So we had an open house with 40 participants. Not a huge number, but an interested number. We had an online survey, provided people opportunity and format to comment. That closed on last Friday. We had about 40 more, probably not unique inputs, but 40 more inputs. And now, based upon your direction, we will go through a formal public process with Planning Commission, with City Council. And I believe our urban renewal administrator has met with each of the taxing districts and provided a similar opportunity to speak. Oh, she assigned me these too. I got promoted. Much like we've talked about before, urban renewal is not the end all be all for financing. It does provide an opportunity to have a local match, but each of these projects are definitely going to be reliant on outside funds, either private investment to leverage additional state housing funds, especially the LIFT funds, which we've been pursuing for our affordable housing projects, opportunities for grants. Hopefully this becomes a local match. We always want to leverage new opportunities that become available. This really provides some of the locally generated resources that we have to see that. We also want to commingle funds when it comes, or leverage funds from our other agencies or from our other investments. We have restricted funds, stormwater projects, water lines, sewer funds are all dedicated to just those purposes. But oftentimes when we start having road projects, we want to make a great opportunity to make the best use of those funds, bidding an entire street with water and sewer. So we hope that the urban renewal funds can help supplement and really take some of those existing funds investments that you make across the city and really accelerate that. The proposed projects that show up in this plan for transportation are really focused around Cascade Avenue and the interstate. Cascade being the city's only east to west arterial. It is the historic Columbia River Highway. It also is really the commercial spine of the west side. The vast majority of your large pieces for development access Cascade. So it has regional significance. It also has a local significance here to your largest, most I would call them ambitious projects will hinge on this. And really the entire city in many ways hinges on its success. The adequacy of Cascade will really depend and allow really any development to go through. It is important to access the interstate. It's important to access the city. It's a ODOT transportation facility, and if it fails, your development will grind to a halt. It also serves, and we've been directed, it is an important gateway to the city. It's not only a historic gateway, it has a future gateway role, and we've been, its emphasis to not just simply a route, but actually a placemaking opportunity has been important. We've worked with DKS and MIG and state on some of the future looks of that. This project is prioritized as to take it to the next level. It's also an extremely expensive project. So a project that could not be accomplished by any single development, therefore the need to have a collaborative approach is there. The interstate itself and the interchange gets some attention, as well as Cascade Avenue and Ram. Intersections at Mount Adams, which is again a major intersection needed to complete. The widening of Cascade itself, really to accommodate some of the anticipated public facilities for walking and biking. The historic highway bike trail is coming to town soon to Ruthven Park and Westcliff. We should anticipate and try to understand the increased stress and opportunity that this will come. So that cross section anticipates additional ped and bike facilities. In the plan, it also talks other projects as opportunities come up. They want to build in some flexibility. If the opportunity presents itself to help really take advantage of a project, a collaboration, a partnership, we left space in there for us to, and for the agency to really be able to be nimble and be responsive, to not just lock it into a finite number of projects. There's something great. We have an opportunity, and it's built into the plan to capitalize on that. Housing projects, looking at land act as the primary opportunity. It is a finite resource. This also comes directly from the affordable housing strategy. You may not have the funds to build houses, but the land will become a finite resource that eventually goes away. So getting opportunities to acquire property has been part of the city's role in the past. This provides the agency the same opportunity to acquire property. That becomes part of our partnership for land acquisition. Parks and paths, these come out of the master plan, multi-jurisdictional master plan, also out of the city's transportation system plan, looking at the three paths, Ridgeline, West Side, and Henderson Creek paths. These are very much in pieces and segments, and we picked up opportunities as subdivisions have gone in to see them improved. This provides a little different venue and resource to see these things completed ahead of time, or in collaboration with development, rather than just an exaction. We now have a resource to leverage against and to provide some advanced work and planning. Back to a link.
You guys are very good at this.
I get the money ones mostly. So in those categories, the major categories, transportation, housing, parks and trails, and administration, the funding has been allocated at this point. We understand that an urban renewal plan goes over a couple of decades of, 10 years, 20 years. So these funding allocations may change depending on any other resources that you're able to locate, other funding sources, but this is what has been established in the plan to begin with. So heavy on transportation, because those transportation projects are required to be able to open up those lots to allow for that development and to do Cascade Avenue, which is a very expensive project. Housing is about half of the little more than half of the transportation. Parks and trails 11.7, and then administration 6.5. So for a total of $92,500,000, those dollars are in today's dollars. So the maximum indebtedness that we'll talk about on the next slide is in future dollars, where we allocated the projects initially in today's dollars. So in the report on the plan, the net tax increment funds are estimated to be a little over $173 million. The difference between net tax increment funds and the maximum indebtedness is the interest on debt. So if you don't ever borrow any money, you don't incur that additional cost. However, when you have large projects like you have, you typically end up having to borrow money because you can't do, otherwise you wait so long to be able to do that project. So you need to borrow the money and be able to pay that off over time as those tax increment revenues come through. The maximum indebtedness of the plan is $146,700,000. Maximum indebtedness is the controlling feature of a plan. Duration is not required in an urban renewal plan. Only the maximum indebtedness is the required component that constrains that plan. And again, the amount of those funds are over that life of the district. They're not available at day one. They're available as that 3% interest on existing development starts accumulating. And as any new construction happens in the area, that new construction will then all come into the urban renewal agency for the life of the plan, and you'll be able to fund projects. So you've got a bit of a chicken and an egg here. You need the transportation, but you also need that development to occur to allow you to have the funding for those improvements. And that is how urban renewal areas work. So trying to balance those is always interesting. This just shows, again, that capacity of funds for activities in today's dollars. So about $94.9 million. In the first years 1 through 5, we have 20.5 there. And that is because we're anticipating that you will take out a bond and work on doing a larger project. Year 6 through 10, 19.7, 11 through 15, 22.9, 16 through 20, 14.9, and 21 until the district ends, another 17 million. So the money comes in typically kind of in those equal parts over the lifetime of the district. So as you're spending money, you spend money in those kind of chunks over the lifetime of the district. The next steps and timeline. So we completed the feasibility study. You all reviewed that. You directed staff to go forward with the plan and report. Your city manager met with all taxing districts who wanted to meet and made a presentation. And I want to commend her for that, because in most cities that doesn't happen until this stage. So she met with them all up front, which what is great. We will send them out the consult and confer, and anybody who wants an additional meeting, we will meet with them again. So tonight is your review, and if you decide to move forward, the taxing district letters will go out within the next week or so. They get 45 days by statute to provide written comments that come back to the city council. The Urban Renewal Advisory Committee is going to review the plan and report on June 15th. The Planning Commission is scheduled to review it for conformance with the comp plan on July 10th. A city council public hearing on August 14th. August 21st, this County Board of Commissioners consideration for approval. We have, I think, also scheduled a July meeting, or are trying to schedule a July meeting with the County Commission to make sure all of their questions get answered prior to taking it to them for the August 21st meeting. If it is adopted by the Board of Commissioners and City Council, the district actually begins January 1st, 2024, and receives your first year of tax increment financing in fiscal year in 2025. Those are all, how can residents provide input? I think that's important. So they can email to the city recorder. There are the Urban Renewal Agency meetings, the advisory committee meetings, the planning commission hearing, the county commission meetings, and the city council hearing. So all of those are opportunities. If anybody emails questions to the city recorder at j.gray@cityofhoodriver.gov, staff will respond to those questions.
There's an error in the slide, last slide in this slide, just July 10th is not when the planning commission meets, July 7th. So this slide is correct. The previous slide is wrong about the planning commission date. So let's not have that proliferate.
17.
This says the 17th, which is, I just keep track of city councils because I have to attend them. So July 10th is not a planning commission.
Yes.
The last slide said
And
it was.
this slide is correct.
Good, just don't, let's not let that
Yes,
duplicate.
thank you.
Yep. You know,
So unless there are any questions specifically on this, we'll just leave it at here, but if you want to go back to any slide.
Could
you
jump
can.
into public comments at this point, and then the agency will have questions.
It does not matter
Correct.
to me. I don't know. That's,
Sure. Yeah, just give us, because that's what I said we do when we started. So, Arthur, you signed up? Does anyone else want to speak at about the West Side Urban Renewal District? I'll say something. Okay, so Arthur first, and then we'll have Dr. Sure.
Arthur Babbitts, 3 Hazel Avenue, Hood River. I'm also the county commissioner for District 2, which means I share to a large degree, I share a constituency with you folks. And I need to say up front that what I'm speaking about, the Board of Commissioners has not yet deliberated on this issue. So I am speaking for myself. I am trying to give you a preview of things I will say to the Board of Commissioners, and I understand that you have a deadline. I do not want to in any way get in the way of the deadline. I want to see this district start on time. So I'm taking this early opportunity to present these issues so that you can consider it, and we can make sure that there's no conflict or no difficulty as those dates get, the summer will get busy and those dates will get closer and closer. I am asking for 3 things. I've simplified all my thinking down to 3 major issues, which I'd like to address. Number 1 is annexation. I think that it is critical to acknowledge that without annexation, that none of your plans for what you want to happen on the west side will be successful. A previous city council many decades ago allowed for a patchwork development of sections of the urban growth area. That patchwork now creates a virtually unsolvable situation where organic annexation, where you say parcel by parcel, developer by developer, things will come into the city, simply will not work. We've seen over decades that it does not happen that way. You're creating a situation where only large developers will be successful if they're willing to spend money, which will drive up the cost of the projects that they're developing. So what I'd like to propose is that this city council correct the mistakes that were made in the past. And I would like to see, and I'm proposing that the county commission and the city council adopt a policy which says that it will be our policy to annex the remaining portions of the urban growth area fully into the city within the next 10 years. Number 2 is scale. Big is good. I'm glad that you went for a big plan. I'm glad you're looking at a big plan here. But there's one thing I want to remind you of. You do have a cap on the amount of acreage that you can put into urban renewal. 5 times in the last 4 decades, the city council has found it had critical problems that could not be solved without the use of urban renewal, and went to that well. I am in 3 of those cases, I'm not sure about the 4th, but in 3 of those cases, they created 100-acre districts, roughly, plus or minus. So I think that it's important that you leave a path by which your successors who have to face problems that you can't anticipate will have the ability to create a 100-acre urban renewal agency, urban renewal district, I'm sorry. And I think you have a bunch of ways to do that. you have some acreage which you are holding, or which you're looking at holding in the waterfront. And then you have, assuming you're successful with annexation, you raise the number of acres that you are allowed to have within urban renewal. So you need to do some math. I think there's time to do the math, but I would like you to think about how you can reserve 100 acres plus or minus so that it will be available in, say, 5 years, 8 years, 10 years, rough time frame, to solve a problem that you cannot imagine. And then the final issue is the waterfront. And I understand there's been some movement on that. I would like to suggest that you leave the ability to use the existing tax increment at the waterfront and not take actions which will cause the waterfront plan to shut down before you consider whether Lot 1 development will need to use that tax increment. And if the idea comes along that is sufficiently compelling, that you are excited to see that happen and that the community is excited to see that happen, I would predict that raising the MI to allow that to happen would be a piece of cake. What I'm suggesting is simply don't foreclose upon your options. Don't take the actions which would cause the plan to close and all of the acreage to return to the bucket. Make sure that you leave some time and space to make those decisions in a careful and thoughtful environment. So with that, thank you very much.
Please state your name and address to the.
Yeah, my name's Brian Yake, and I'm 11 Teal Road in White Salmon. I also have the honor of representing the Caldwells in the Stonehenge Gardens development, and we wanted to take a moment to just make sure that council is really putting some thought into what's available to them in this proposed development. It's a fully funded development, vertically integrated, so there's a little less risk associated with that development than other developments that you can see come down the line. So we're extremely excited to be under contract with this developer. Number two, they are putting up a minimum of 150 workforce housing. And I heard questions today, regarding, how can you assure the developer is willing to deed restrict that development and assure that, it's going to the, correct target audience. So the second thing that we want to be a little bit more vocal on is this consistency out of the council, and make sure that what I have seen by talking to people and doing a lot of reading is certainly consistency in the rhetoric, that's being used, the written work. Transportation is by far the number one. And I think when I read about transportation, the things that resonate with me are safety, both motor vehicle and pedestrian, bike pedestrian, and maybe a little bit more of a back seat to connectivity. Okay. And I'll elaborate on that a little bit more later, but yeah. And then the second thing is, of course, affordable housing. You're breaking that out in a separate bucket and doing your work. So, really, when we take a look at the projects in the West Side Urban Renewal District, that's, where we want to be a little bit more vocal and make sure that projects that are, supporting affordable housing get proper attention.
Cool. Thank you very much.
Yeah,
Yep.
Thank you.
All right, now back to our regularly scheduled program. Hey.
Elaine, while you were presenting, I had a question and I don't remember what slides it was on, but there's the list of like the 94, 95 million and then the like 146 maximum indebtedness. Can you just in really simple terms explain the difference between those two numbers?
Yes, it is time value of money. The 94,900,000 is in today's dollars. And the 146 is inflated by 3% annually every year. And when you take that out for the time frame of the area, that equals 146,700,000. So it is only that if we've been given estimates of the costs of these projects in today's dollars, they will cost more when we actually get to do them in 10 years.
Okay,
I
so
know.
it's not that we're only using 2/3 of our maximum indebtedness. It is in today's dollars, we are using almost the full amount.
That's correct.
Okay. I just wanted to clarify that.
Well, I think other people probably have questions, so let's go around the horn, just sort of opposite from what we did last time. So Heather, you're Oh, I thought
Sorry,
that was
I'm having
Chrissy.
a hard time unmuting. I don't have any questions right now. I'm processing.
Okay, cool. Grant.
I didn't have any questions for staff or consultants specifically.
I mean, I would say that my questions are, can we address, can we address Arthur's 3 points? Because I think that's going to also help me with follow-up questions. Can these dollars be used for annexation? Can we potentially reserve 100+ acres yeah, can we, and then at least those two for right now.
I'll let Dustin deal with the annexation. And
Yeah, it's the agency's authority whether it wants to use that.
So for example, let's say in this year, we've had 2 builders that have come to us to annex properties and we've done so. Do we need to write very specific language that would give us that flexibility 10 years from now to say, hey, we are in a position now where we need even more housing and we need to annex X amount of the urban growth boundary? Can we use these dollars for that?
I don't know if it's a dollar request. I think it's an authority request that is being, whether it costs money to do so. I think it's, I don't think the agency I can tell you the agency can't change city council's policy. So although you may look very much like city council, the only person who can change the boundaries of this city, well, you can have the electors do it by an election. Typically, that's not the way that it's done because of the rigors of holding an election. That's a city council call. So if you want to discuss that and send that to city council when they hear it, that would be a great time.
Given that it's a council policy decision, I think the question for here is there a bucket that we can build in the West Side plan that could partially fund annexation or fully fund? I mean, are there strings we can tie to dollars in the West Side plan that will assist it if council chooses to do an aggressive annexation plan?
I believe we have contingency funds built into the budget. Those contingency funds can fund buying parks, buying more land, doing other transportation projects that weren't specifically identified. They conceivably could be used also for working on the annexation issue. So that we haven't identified that as a particular project within the plan, and I don't know if it'd have to be identified specifically or not. I'd have to think about that and get back to you. I know Abigail did some research on whether it could be an allowed cost. And
I mean, I think that's just it. If we are in a position now to think about the future, we don't know what's going to happen in a couple of years from now. What do we do now to allow us and other councils that flexibility to use these dollars for other, needs that we have, right? We've had a pipe that has burst, right? And we've had to figure that piece out. So what if we have something like
And
that? Like, how much
I don't
flexibility?
know. I am not an annexation expert by any means, so I don't know the rules on annexation. So, you know, somebody around here would have to decide that. But what I can do, I know city manager is back later this week. We can verify those conversations on annexation and the use of funds. And if it was the direction of the agency to make that clear that you wanted to put that in, if it was legal, you could so direct us to make that addition to the plan documents to allow for that out of those contingency funds.
And then question number, do you have a follow-up to that, Megan? Or?
Related to this, Arthur and I had a long conversation about this, and staff also, that it gets a little bit fuzzy. Like, for example, would annexing large tracts facilitate our city goals? Because we have our 6 goals and none of them says get busy on annexing, but it may be that we're retarding achieving those goals by not having the land be already annexed. I'm not completely convinced that it's a certainty. So it's hard to figure out whether that's an appropriate priority for the city. I do think that becoming more proactive in annexing instead of simply waiting for a developer to come would have its benefits. But there are also instances where it is in the city's best interest, all our residents' best interest, to not just broad brush annex, because there's certain circumstances where it would save the city money to wait for the development to be proposed, and then the developer helps to pay for annexation. So it's kind of philosophical and unknown, at least to me.
I think the question for this group is, do we have the hooks in there? So if future agency chooses and council chooses to do it, we haven't built
Another barrier that's
barrier.
going to prevent us from being able to do that, or that we're putting ourselves just in, that we are using restrictive language that can't be modified later on. I appreciate Commissioner coming and saying, hey, here's some challenges that we saw in the past and that we don't want to repeat moving forward. Megan, did you have a follow-up on the annexation question before I go into question?
Well, I think you basically said it, but yeah, I guess I would love us to know that if we need to add any language to the plan that allows the flexibility if and when council decides that we haven't gotten rid of that option, but the option is still there. So if there's language that needs to be added, that'd be good to do. If what we have now works, it would just be nice to know.
I have a daydream idea about that. I'll bring it up when it's my turn.
I'm just trying to understand again the scopes. I have not been a part of creating a new district, and this is all new to me.
Sure.
And I'm trying to make sure that we do have very, smart, specific, measurable, all those
Right.
goals, but that we're also leaving that flexibility for uncertainty. We don't know what it's going to look like 10 years from now. Question 2 is, in your experience or others, around reserving 100 plus or minus acres for, again, future projects? Like, what have you seen that's worked well in other areas potentially that are in similar situations?
There are a few cities in Oregon who go right up to that 25%. And they do it purposefully because they have found urban renewal to be an excellent tool for them. So the city of Wilsonville has historically been right at that 25%. They actually have 2 districts that are going to expire in the next 2 years. And they're thinking now about creating a new one to take that back up. The city of Lebanon is also right at that 25%. And I don't know if any of you have ever seen the medical school there in Lebanon, but that was an urban renewal project. And it's an amazing project. So it really depends on the agency and the city council, what you see. The next item that you're going to be look at tonight is extending the waterfront, or changing the boundary of the waterfront district and leaving it at 41 acres. Those 41 acres include much of the development, and we'll talk more about that when we get to that. But once that district expires, whether it's next year when it meets its MI, or if some action is taken to increase the MI some, that 42 acres become immediately available. So that is a good cushion to me. And in emergency situations, I've never seen, usually I've got to add 10 acres because I've got to go up to this water reservoir, or I've got to take in this pipe that's burst or whatever. So 100 acres seems ambitious to me to decide that's what you need. But it really depends. And I think staff can say, oh yeah, we've thought about urban renewal elsewhere, but I don't think you've thought about urban renewal anywhere else that you would be wanting to hold 100 acres to do that. So in my mind, you've got the 42 acres of the waterfront, whether that's 1 year or 3 years or what it is. This area doesn't start actually taking increment, for another year.
The other piece that can free up readily, and we're gonna see this at waterfront, is the ability to shed acreage. Purchase of parks and open space as one of the goals also allows us the opportunity, once acquired, to shed that real estate and free up a little bit of available acreage if needed. You bought the park, it's never gonna generate increment. You can shed it from the district.
Those are minor adjustments, is that right?
And
That's minor, isn't it, Elaine?
it's a minor amendment. It just is done by the agency, getting rid of acreage. And if you, and as Mr. Babbitt said, get your fine pencil out, but on acreage, this does take you right up to the 25% with this amount of acreage. And we did make adjustments based on input from Mr. Babbitt's and others that they wanted to keep that waterfront whole, at least for now. And we took some acres out of the west side area already to be able to accommodate keeping that acreage down in the waterfront. So I guess my recommendation is, I think you're fine with those 42 acres. And I have worked with other cities where they need to free up acreage, and we start, if 42 isn't enough, and we just start going at an area and eliminating right away that doesn't need to be there. So you can free up acreage that way also.
Thank you. That helps me understand again what sort of restrictions are, again, the scope and the scale. So thank you. No further questions for me.
Megan, did you have a acreage question?
Well, I think Arthur mentioned it, but it's the twofold thing of, as we annex, we can add acres that way, and then we could shed if we get to some emergence. So there's like two different ways to add to the 42.
Yes.
Okay.
And we can look at the total acreage within the area that's in unincorporated and get that information back to you at some point before this comes to city council or to the county commission also, and say, okay, if all of that were annexed, what's 25% of that? And that's that additional cap that you would have.
You're good?
For now, yes. Kind of thinking of my.
As the desired development happens on the west side, which is going to fail first, the 62 interchange or the Mount Adams Cascade intersection? I don't mean to be like funny. Is that like an unknowable thing? We just.
None is the answer, right?
Never gonna fail. I think the localized one becomes more vulnerable
Mount Adams.
because that all traffic will go through there. Its capacity is also less than the interchange itself.
Thank you.
Megan, did you have other things?
Yes, we touched on annexation. Are we doing like some comment? Some of them aren't really questions. They're like small edit-y things.
Let's just do them at the same time.
Okay. Then on the project list, affordable housing, it's really vague language of 50 to 100 units, under 120. I know we kept that to keep things really flexible, and I think that's really valuable because who knows what's going to happen. But I do, the affordable housing strategy and the need, definitely identifies that the highest need is, of course, with the lowest incomes. And given the folks that came and spoke today, I don't know if it's just adding some language in the descriptor, not necessarily in the project list, but saying that we would, setting a goal for us in future boards or council, or, we're a little bit one and the same, but of like, we definitely want to make sure that, I don't know how, I don't know what the number is, but like, we really want to incentivize 60% of AMI and below projects within these projects. I don't want to add it to the actual project list because I do want that flexibility, but maybe just some sort of language of the identified need is there. We're acknowledging that and showing our intention at the start of this district to pursue that.
And I don't know, I think that's more staff.
Yeah, that if
Just-
if five of you want that language in there, it absolutely can be there.
Fair enough.
The idea that, and I guess to synthesize that would, the need for housing has been based prioritization, for those most in need. I mean, is that like, we would articulate that.
I mean, I think there's something about the language of the, 60% of AMI, just like having that in the descriptor somewhere just adds that articulation of, I think, one of our many goals around housing, but I think there's value in just having that spelled out in our.
And I don't know the affordable housing strategy by word, right? I've read it a number of times. Was that called out specifically there? Because I can certainly go back and cite that from whatever language was in that, and that would be really easy to, because what we've tried to do here is not make new policy, but to use your existing documents. So just said,
I'm trying to remember.
so I'll go back and look at.
I think this is where it's like, I don't want to change, the actual chart of the projects, because I think the vague there is well within our reality. It's just kind of in I think the need talked about it already, that, the need you pulled from the housing strategy is very much talking about the lowest incomes are the highest. So I guess up to the rest of the board, but it, just like one word or one sentence, one word.
Are you saying like 120%, but preferential treatment?
Well, and
There's like, how would you word it?
something to make sure at least some of the project is that, and I think, again, given current funding models, some of it will be, but.
So Megan, you don't think the direct reference to a bolded affordable housing strategy is sufficient, or?
I think some of this is maybe just like, I don't think we're not achieving, we wouldn't be building 60 and below already, and we wouldn't be achieving all of this in the written thing. Some of it is maybe just clarifying for our overlapping taxing districts and the public that would read this, that we are specifically acknowledging the need of 60 and below within all this conversation of 120 and below.
Right.
Just so folks know that they are being heard and the need is known.
So a few more words in table 3 is what.
I was on table 6 on page 16 of the plan.
I'm sure there's a few multiple places where I'm looking at housing and there's housing projects and it references.
Goal, just so you know, there's a goal statement on page 9 of the plan.
Yeah.
It talks about affordable housing. It talks about, that's where you'll find the reference of up to 120 if you find it important to have something of a greater strata.
Well, and again, I'm not going to rewrite the goal because those goals are just pulled from the strategy, but in our plan, which is like affordable housing B on page 16, it's I think just having something of within our, and maybe I'm not articulating well, but.
So that seems fairly straightforward to, because it's not asking for something new. It's just how do we reference the work that we did.
Or that we're, more specific.
Well, and I just can't remember if the plan itself called that out, but.
If everybody decides you want to do that, what I would do first is go back to the affordable housing strategy and see if I could pull or find some language there. And then make that, use that same kind of verbiage here on recognizing the need for the up to 60%. I've tried not to create new language, so let me go first and, if so directed, go first and pull that language from that document, and I'm sure there's something there that says what the need is. So, you know, recognizing the need for and do that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I think so, yeah, and thank you. And then page 82 of our packet, which is 12 of the report, but not the plan, confusingly. But it's the parks chart with the estimated costs, and I had pre-sent this question to Elaine and Dustin, but it seemed like the land acquisition and development for the urban renewal for the urban renewal parks didn't, I mean, there's no cost in there, and it didn't seem like it was included in the total. Is that correct?
It is included in the contingency. So we put costs in where we knew costs. We don't know the cost of acquisition of that. On affordable housing, we didn't know cost of anything, so we didn't try to break that out either by parcel or anything. We just had a total number. So there is not, you are absolutely correct in that $11 million number. That does not include number for acquisition of parks. So we could either put a number there, or we can put in some verbiage that says there is a contingency line item that includes both of this, and under transportation, there are other transportation projects, right? Which is that's more of a catch-all. This is more of a specific thing, so we can address that however you would like.
There's nothing in those being empty that would prevent a future agency or us next year of jumping on an opportunity to acquire parks, right? I mean, this is a guide, and then we're gonna react to situations that come up.
And we can put more verbiage in to say that. I think there is verbiage that says all of these costs in the beginning of the project section is these costs are estimates, and the agency will adjust these through their annual budgeting process. And so we can address that however the agency wants to tell us to.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I know we can, and I'm hoping we're doing more than the specific list. I guess, you know, we added, I think it was West Side Drive is what we added when we got rid of West Cliff Drive sidewalk. And if you're thinking about messaging to a future board, I'd rather take that 2 million and shove it into the parks thing and say, okay, we're planning to buy those. And then if there's extra money we find, it's for this extra sidewalk we just added. In the realm of, like, if I was going to prioritize things, having the parks be fully unfunded doesn't feel like it would be the priority we've discussed.
That we're messaging to future us.
Yeah, of the things, the extra one is West Side Drive versus the urban parks. I guess is my.
Yeah, that can be changed if.
I mean, well, I'm kind of looking at, does anyone else want to agree?
Well, I'm sorry, Tim, jumping ahead. Part of what's also just really or just gives me pause is that, and I understand we're forward thinking, but the timelines, right? So as an operator, you want to create goals that are very specific, they're measurable, and that they're time bound, right? Like it's going to take us 5 years, 10 years. That can help us prioritize, you know, what can we get done the fastest? And maybe we start there. And then things that are going to take us a little longer, maybe we start that a little later. So I feel like I'm missing that in all of this work. And again, I recognize that we're projecting.
That's a great comment, and we do have as part of my contract to, if this gets adopted, to develop a 5-year action plan. And we have Cadence Petros from Echo Northwest and I would work on that together. So that is exactly what you're saying, but we put that to the end to make sure it gets adopted.
Right.
So if you want to do a project that needs to be in the plan, we know that you can amend plans with a minor amendment and add projects. So that's something you also could do with annexation if you decided to in the future, or you could decide to put something in there for it now. The other option is to say, well, in the future, if we decide we want to allocate money, we can do that through a minor amendment, which is just the agency making that decision on their own. But then the 5-year action plan will be a really good document for your agency to say, okay, what are we going to do in the priorities?
I guess so back to, do other folks want to change the money allocation from West Side to Parks, or am I?
I like seeing a number in there if there's a place to take it from, so.
Having $0 for parks acquisition seems like the wrong number.
We could put approximately, I suppose, right? Like approximately X amount of dollars, just as a.
We can take it from contingency and
Sure.
put it in there.
Right.
Yeah.
$1 billion for each one, just as.
I mean,
The future generation will be like, they thought we could get these for $1 million.
well, I'd rather take it from West Side than get rid of the contingency, but.
From West Side, what?
So we got rid of the sidewalk on West Cliff Drive and they added doing a sidewalk or multi-use path on West Side Drive. But if we pull from contingency, then we don't have any flexibility from anything else. But if we just, leave that one blank for right now and go, if we can do it, we can do it. But that 2 million gets moved to.
Right now, which major, because I'm looking at this one, but mine says 19 million. Yours is-
Yeah.
Go to page 12 of the.
So our contingency is only 965,000. So we
Right
could
here,
pull
right?
all of that for parks, or we could do as suggested and get rid of one of the
I think
parks here to
it's
put down to a lower amount.
I mean, what about, reducing the first one, but not eliminate it, because then that would be.
I think it stays in the plan. I mean, that's still just messaging of like parks are more important than the drive, but we still want to do all of them.
Yeah, so
But
make
what if
all
the
3 of them.
driveway is gonna get us more housing. And so
How about we take the West Side Drive sidewalk down by $1 million and put that as parks acquisition? Can we get to yes on that?
Then the contingency is another $1 million.
I guess the part is, the number is, it comes from the TSP, an anticipated number. So to call the project out and half fund it, I mean, I guess that's, you could have something to say, we're expecting this to be 1 million, but you are, there's shared resources. So
Yeah,
that's,
but
we
putting
expect the
an
developer to
asterisk
pay
that-
the other 70%, 100% of the difference.
Yeah, the anticipation of an ODOT grant when they build Ruth on to blah, blah, blah.
I mean, and most of your road projects are written that way. The TSP is anticipated that, the west side and for the urban renewal district and the taxing bodies are not going to 100% load these projects. There needs to be some matchmaking there. Development is anticipated by your TSP to oversize roads where capacity is needed. Or they're there to create the agencies there to add on the capacity. So much like this, if a 5-foot sidewalk is half the price, this anticipates a 10-foot side path disconnected from the road that's following the city's TSP, and what we've heard, that's a $2 million project, so.
Well, and I think it's just saying that we're gonna have to be clever about that one. Let's fiddle the numbers so that it doesn't have a higher priority implied than the acquisition. You need us to do anything for you?
So let's think about all changes we've talked about. If you take some of the annexation money and put it in, or if you move this around, you're also asking about contingency money, you're also asking about annexation money. So if you're wanting to put a dollar amount to annexation money, you've got to figure out where that's going to come from. If you just want to give the authority, and then in the future, when you hit that hurdle, you have to readjust your budgets and figure out where it's coming from.
Let's get through the rest. Let's get through the rest of the questions so we have a list of where we're trying to allocate money.
Okay. Then.
Yes, money.
Well, luckily the other one's not, and it's really more just a language thing. I preemptively talked to Elaine and Dustin again, but page 85 of the packet. Second paragraph talks about assumed annual growth rate of 3%. I think it was just the language is confusing because I'm reading that as, oh, we're growing by 3%, which is what we'd already do under, 5 and 50. So clearly we're planning to grow more. That's the whole point of urban renewal. So I was asking you guys to change language. I don't know if you can discuss.
Yeah, I don't have the language prepared, but yes,
Okay.
we will. We will add in language because we talked below there about the assumptions on development. So we'll add in language to make that a little more clear that the 3% plus the exception value. So I
Awesome.
appreciate that.
Yeah, I just want to make
Yep.
sure we're
Yep.
being clear with
Yep.
everyone in the community.
Yep.
About what the goal is. Okay, those were my things.
Tim. Can you just like briefly tell us how the transportation projects will incent development?
Well, part of it's a little incent and allow both. When we get to much of this area, one of the hallmarks of decision and ability to approve projects has to do with adequate public facilities, and streets being one of those. So you need to have the amount of water, the amount of sewer in order to approve development. You also need the sufficient amount of road capacity that there's essentially a transportation planning rule. The TPR rule is known that comes from the land use planning program in the great state of Oregon that basically says you cannot fail your public facilities and your street facilities. So by having facilities with adequate capacity to be ready for development or allow for development occur, will allow investment tax increment to occur in this area. Without those facilities, failing facilities, you will be unable to approve development requests.
So do you think that the 82 interchange is obviously, do you think it's an essential component to this?
It's essential component. You cannot fail, expect to have consequences if you fail the states or the interstate highway system, meaning a ramp. That will be increasingly difficult and unique conversations when it comes to who's responsible for it. Are you responsible for the interstate? On the city's behalf and probably the agency's behalf, you will have me up there saying, we have 3 interstate highway systems, 8,800 people in the city. I can't believe every trip from every resident within the city will fail that intersection. And I have a very strong lobbying agency that pushes traffic up to 25,000 people here on the weekend. Accountability becomes an important discussion.
Yeah, I totally get that, but would there be development that would be denied because?
Yes, very, very much a possibility. An example of someone not in the room right now was when the Performing Arts Institute was interested in development at Westcliff. The first question I asked them was, yes, you have this facility. Everyone shows up in a 2-hour window to an interstate highway system that has a short deck and is noticeably deficient by the state. Everyone shows up at the same time. We may have a serious problem. And so that was a development that I don't know how we were going to navigate that.
Right.
Even if they funded the whole thing, I don't know how we were going to have or be able to navigate that with the state. We need to take a recess. Are we good?
No, I think he's giving us the high sign. Yeah.
Okay, just sure.
Tim,
So is there a precedence for the annexation part of this to be included in an urban renewal?
It's in none of your plans now. I think what I would ask and discuss with council was you have a policy regarding favorable and not favorable annexations and how you decide between the two.
Right.
I guess I would start with that as what's on the books and what are your kind of current practices now before we had and what do you future want to do?
So is it more a process thing than it is a funding thing? Is the process that we've set up inhibiting annexation?
I wouldn't say it's a step. I mean, annexation is a requirement, whether the process you set it up. I think the huge difference, and I would call the sea change, was 2016 not allowing development to occur outside the city limits without annexation. So I think that's where things really took a turn, whereas annexation wasn't an issue before because no one had to do it. They had to sign a letter of promise that eventually the day would come.
I think we do
that has
need to
changed.
separate the annexation policy and benefits from what goes into the urban renewal plan.
Right, because
So,
this can't make that.
I think it's a
policy.
really good discussion,
Yeah.
but it's already 8:15.
Well, I'm just trying to do that actually,
Yeah.
but make a distinction about, whether this is urban renewal issue or whether this is a city council issue. Because if it's a city council issue, then we should just take it out. Urban renewal.
Well, I think that there's, do we provide a line to a bucket that in urban renewal that would help implement an annexation plan? That's where I'm sort of thinking that it.
And with the caveat, if council decides we don't want to do it.
Yeah.
We have the option, we don't have to utilize it. But I think keeping that door open.
Right, we don't want to restrict ourselves.
I'm not sure that Commissioner Babbitts was suggesting that we change the urban renewal district direction or documentation, but rather that before he's willing to approve the urban renewal district, he would really like to see an increase in the intention to have the city's annexation policy be more aggressive. So not necessarily anything, I could misunderstand, but not necessarily anything in this document, but he wants to see the city be more pro-annexation.
That was my interpretation.
I mean, and we'll talk about that both as council and agency moving forward. Anything else, Tim?
I guess what I heard too is that there's ways to get, like if we wanted 50 acres back. You said we could look at like right of ways, those types of things. That's an option going forward or in the future. So we could do that in the future, or we could do that now.
I think for the West Side District, they already took a good look and eliminated a lot of properties. Well, you can.
Yeah, I think we started at 460 acres. The proposed acreage now is 450 approximately. We've reduced it to accommodate allowing the waterfront to survive as 42 acres to play out the rest of its MI under the current plan and to fund the stormwater line, the last project that you've resolved to fund. So the district was shrunk, but still allows for that 42 acres to exist. There'd be immediate, depending on the life of that district, that could be another 42. I think what we have here is a list based around acreage and MI that we built a project list around what geography and how much real estate was available. If we start reducing the acreage further, we're going to reduce that number. We're going to reduce the MI, we're going to reduce the project list that we can afford. That's absolutely your call.
And you could do that at some time in the future if you had a prospective need. At that point, let's say it's 5 years from now, and you know a little more about this district, and you know more about what's going on in the Heights, and there may be property you could take out of the Heights if there is development that is exempt property that's within the Heights, you could take that out. You'd know more about what the waterfront was doing, but you can, and that's usually when I work with cities to do that, is when the issue comes up and they say, hey, we need 10 more acres, and we say, okay, let's find them. And that's when you start being very critical.
Thank you.
Doug?
I think I'm set for now. I think my questions are probably better suited for council.
For me, I think we answered all the questions that I had. My proposal, there's a whole bunch of other projects as opportunities come up, right? I would love to see, there's 3 things that have come up that I would love to see in the document as other things that could come up without dollars associated with them. And the 3 that I can think of are the annexation fund, the ODOT yard, and trying to get it moved so we could do something in that property. And then some of the some people came and proposed some alternate roads I don't propose that we make those be the front of the plan, but I think that acknowledging these things that people brought forward allows us to have that discussion in years going forward, that and it's, I think it's easy now, and I think it would be harder later. So my proposal is this unfunded projects or other projects that aren't being funded, but have been brought up, and we'd like to recognize them in the
And you
beginning.
could just do that by, for example, IE. You know, you could say other transportations, for
Yeah.
example, whatever road this is that
Yeah.
they brought up. And so we could, we could figure out a way where we aren't specifying that
Yeah.
has a specific dollar type to it, but it is an approved
Right.
activity.
I mean, if it's an appendix or whatever, I've
Yeah.
seen a million ways in other types of documents to have this list of things. Yeah, we talked. So again, just like what Gladys said, we're communicating to an agency 10 years from now that these are things that we were interested in making sure that they talked about if we haven't already, kind of thing.
Paul, do you think that the ODOT yard, which I would imagine would be used for housing, could qualify as a housing project?
Sure, I don't know. I just want to have the ability to, I mean, it has its own special set of strings in it. I'm not sure why it's different to me than a piece of private property, but go ahead.
So I would say it's been discussed in the past, as, different in terms of, your policy regarding surplus governmentally owned pieces of property. Some would say this is surplus. The terms that came along with it from ODOT were not necessarily favorable. However, I don't think it's a foregone conclusion that it is a thing of the past. So surplus property still in vogue.
So outside of the annexation thing where I think there's still the question of if it's in there, like the other roads and the ODOT thing seem like they're covered in other opportunities.
Yeah.
Like in the list of like neighborhood and urban collectors. And so I think it's more a question for us of is there value in messaging to list them out specifically, or, they're definitely already in buckets that the agency could approve in 5 years or 20 years as the plan is written. And so it's, what message do we want to send?
Political value of listing things that we know about now, even though they're not funded. You're absolutely right. And we've already seen with other urban renewal districts that, yeah, that was great. We understand what they were talking about. We're gonna fix up State Street or whatever, the current agency isn't beholden to the past one, but it's sort of nice to have that list. That's my opinion.
I would just say as long as it's broad enough so that we're not restricting ourselves in the future. So whatever broad language we need to add now, that we do it now so that in the future we could talk about the other projects and a road that comes up that a developer does need in order to build affordable housing, that we just don't restrict ourselves now.
And you guys would probably say that that's in there now. Is that?
It's in there now. I hear your idea to respond to people or respond to ideas. And we can do that with broad language.
All right, any other questions? And then I wrote down 4 notes that we talked about, and I think we're close to a motion to send it to other agencies. Grant, did you have any other thoughts? We'll come back to you now. Yeah, you went for a jog.
I would just recommend that you kick the issue of annexation to city council to make to evaluate joining these two things and addressing them in tandem.
Sure. Do you see that as a separate URA
City council
thing? Okay, all right. I think it's a sort of a combo.
I wasn't stating that it was a URA thing. I think for me, the reason I asked that question is to again understand the scope. So I'm not suggesting that the Urban Renewal Board make that decision.
Okay, the four things I wrote down is adding language about 60% AMI to the housing part. Moving dollars around in the parks thing to address not only the, to get some money in those park acquisition things, lines, and maybe partly at the expense of contingency and partly at the expense of MV 4.2. Language about growth. What was what is that?
Adding in that the 3% plus.
Yes.
Specific.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Good job. I said, I know it came from. Thank you. And then some language about other projects and opportunities and
Such as.
yeah, if we a list of such as is what I was thinking. I think that there's some interest in a more general such as is.
Such as doesn't, nobody can come in and say, you said you're going to fund this.
Right. Right.
So.
And I guess that's what gives me pause. If we're very specific of like ODOT yard, right? That maybe that's not something that a future council really wants to focus on, but now it's written in a plan and they do it first.
I guess, and this is personal opinion, is that I like such as is coming from the past, that it explains sort of where their head was or stuff.
Could you do like a potentially including? I mean, I think
Yes.
the roads less so, but ODOT definitely is one that could easily suck up 10 years and not achieve anything.
Right. And I think
But as vague as possible of this is not direction, it's just an idea.
Yeah.
and an annexation future book that's a such as too, I think.
So I think, I mean, to your fourth things, my only fifth one was more the question of if we need to add any language to have annexation be a possibility, again, depending on where council discussion goes. Do we have to add language, or is the plan as it is gonna be fine for that? And I know you said you don't necessarily
I
know the
think you
answer.
would have to add language.
Okay.
And it could also be general language that gives general authority. And then if city council and the county get together and make a decision, you could always be, if that happens before the city council meeting, you could at that point tell us to make it more specific, or in the future, it can become more specific. But if you mention it kind of generally, somebody can go back and say, yeah, this was mentioned generally as a place where we can spend money.
Right.
So I like the potentially including.
Yep.
That,
I like
because that makes such as maybe feels more concrete. I don't know. Potentially including is saying you've thought about it, was discussed.
I love vague language.
So that's 5 by breaking that out from into its own such as.
Potentially.
And is there any other concerns? Heather, back to you. You started this thing off and hopefully you're still with us.
I am still with you. That was a lot of information and I think really good points were brought up, and I think all my questions were answered.
Okay, awesome.
Thank you.
So I think as far as allowing us to present to the other districts, it's a motion saying go present and put these 5 little things in. Is that right?
So would we need to change the motion from what's in the packet to say something about, with the 5 addition? Okay.
That's what I think is best. So this is
Okay.
page 20 of the packet.
So I will attempt this. I move that staff proceed with the public review process for the West Side Urban Renewal Area Plan and Report with the 5 edits discussed tonight for city council consideration in accordance with ORS chapter 457 and all other applicable requirements.
A second.
That was specific enough with our notes. Okay, we have a motion from Megan and a second from Gladys to proceed with public review process. Any other discussion? All in favor, say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed? Chair says yes, motion passes. Awesome. We stay on the timeline. That's the important part. Okay, do we want to take a couple minute break before we do the waterfront or yes, okay.
Yes.
All right, 5 minutes. I was almost close to being done with my bags. are restarting after break. There are two things left on the agenda. The first one is the waterfront. Oh, I'm in Exhibit B, not in the URA packet. So this starts on 137. Okay. Are we waiting for Elaine to come back, or did she's split?
In Lincoln City now or something.
Ah. Oh, we didn't say thanks. Pass that along, will you?
Sir, thank you for her efforts for coming out.
Okay, staff report, minor amendment to waterfront urban renewal district.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to the correct page in your packet. As a part, really, and part and parcel of approving a plan with 406 acres and sticking with our 25% land geography to urban renewal plan, we looked at the reduction of some real estate on a waterfront. In order to fund the remaining stormwater line, which is the last project that you have dedicated all funds to, it will require preservation of some real estate within the waterfront, both areas where we can spend those funds, and as well as the ability to fund that project or to meet the MI. You have a revised map within your packet that shows a geography that we believe captures a sufficient amount of increment. Actually, it's on page 141, as well as a legal description following that includes up to page 146 that really captures the growth in the area, your new development, your commercial development, and as mentioned before, sheds out the park, areas that have not been built upon, the wastewater treatment plant, the hook, portions of Nichols Basin that are underwater, and takes down your, what was once 100-acre urban renewal area to approximately 41 acres. This area reduction will allow West Side to be built out at 406. So in order to make that amendment, this is the body to do so. It does not, it's a minor amendment by its reduction. You have the authority to approve it if you see fit.
Cool. Let's start with Megan.
Really minor question, and I think the answer is that most of the land we're taking out doesn't accrue any tax. So is there any money that's going to go back to the overlapping taxing districts after this amendment?
There actually is that 3% growth on the Maritime building, the Lure Jensen building pre-existed the establishment of the district in 2008, I believe. So that all the increment that is based upon that 3%, now it's no longer in the district. 3% growth will go back to those districts.
But a small amount.
A small amount. Yeah, this is, again, the vast majority of the property taken out was publicly owned park and aquatic resources. So.
I don't have a question, more of a comment. If we're going to retain it, I would like to actually have a well fleshed out plan for something that's going to actually happen.
That's right. I think this is the first thing.
Yeah.
I have one question. This is a minor adjustment. If we wanted to pull Barman in, for example, it's another minor adjustment that the agency could do to shift stuff around. Is that right? Or does re-changing it in the future, where's the line where it becomes a major adjustment? Because I want to avoid that line.
Adding land pretty immediately becomes a major amendment. 'Cause you can only add up to one.
Adding acres.
Right, yeah.
So I think we have, this is the balloon that's our, you know, it's why we reduced the west side, and it's the future balloon for other urban renewal adjustments. But I just want to make sure that everything we're doing balloon wise is a minor adjustment.
I think what your major adjustment's gonna come to be, you've reached the maximum indebtedness of the district. If you are going to change your project to beyond what your MI is, if you want something more than a stormwater line, you're gonna be in a major amendment territory.
Right, if you want to increase your
MI,
indebtedness.
yep.
Yep.
So your geography question may be moot to you're already in the MI.
Okay.
You're changing the finances and adding a project beyond your cap. You may be in MI, you may be in the major amendment anyway.
Right.
So.
Okay, but for this thing here, as far as I can tell here, is we're ready to make this. So. Thank you, Paul. Heather, any thoughts on approving this adjustment to the waterfront?
I love it. I think
Awesome.
it's a win-win. Yes.
I move that we approve resolution URA number 2023-URA-01. Approving a minor amendment to the waterfront urban renewal district plan to reduce the district size to approximately 42 acres as identified in the attachment.
I will second.
All right, we have a motion by Paul and a second by Doug. Any other comments? All those in favor of the amendment, say yes.
Yes.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, I vote yes as well, and the motion passes.
No, item 4.
Item 4. This is
This one. Didn't get walked.
the sheet here. Is there a suggested motion? Yes, there is. So this is making adjustments to the budget for, or Chris, do you want to do a presentation?
Sure. No, so this resolution is for the current fiscal year. It is Oregon law that any amounts that are budgeted towards contingency need to be reappropriated, even if it's within the fund, in order for them to be spent. There are 3 appropriations here that move contingency from the contingency line item to the operations line item or to the debt service line item. The actual resolution has the overall appropriations budget and what contingency is being moved. Again, there is no change in the overall appropriation. It's just the movement of contingency. I just very quickly, the URA general fund is moving it from contingency to operations. Generally, this is going to cover any anticipated legal costs between now and the end of the fiscal year. The waterfront URA, the debt service on the NATO loan was an estimate and not actual. It fluctuates based on actual property tax received. And so this contingency reflects the actual debt service. And then finally is in the Heights, there is the work being done by MIG for the streetscape plan. They don't follow the same fiscal year as we do, so they don't bill accordingly. And so this takes into account, sort of expected billings for that ongoing project. And that is it.
Any questions for staff on this amendment?
Ready to make a motion?
Dude.
I move to adopt resolution 2023-URA-03, adopting the transfer of appropriations for fiscal year 2022 to 2023 budget.
Right. We have a motion from Megan and a second from Paul to adopt this resolution 2023 URA-03 for finishing up 22-23 cleanly. All in favor say yes.
Aye.
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 Any nays? Hearing none, chair votes yes as well. Motion passes.
Thank you all for your flexibility on that. We will not need to have a special meeting on June 26th.
Oh, that's good too.
Your investment is well appreciated.
We have a agency member report out. Does anyone wish to use that time to say anything? Heather?
Sorry for the delay. No, nothing from me.
Okay, I don't see any, so the Urban Renewal Agency meeting of June 12th is closed.
Now we'll reconvene the city council meeting at 9:15, 12 minutes of 9. We're on the public hearing for our own budget adoption. I have a script. This is the time scheduled for a public hearing regarding the approved budget for 23-24 and the use of state shared revenue for the city of Hood River. The approved budget uses state shared revenue as a general fund revenue source supporting police, fire, EMS, parks, and planning programs. We will now take public testimony. City recorder, has anyone registered to speak or provided written testimony? Public hearing on the fiscal year 23-24 approved budget and use of state shared revenue is now closed. Boom. Moving on to the consent agenda, Councilor Saunders did request something be pulled off. Megan,
Sorry, do we need to approve the budget?
do we vote at this time or later? We vote now. That's not on the script. So the motion is on page 7, I think. Yep. Thank you for the catch, y'all.
I move that the city council adopt resolutions 2023-07 and 2023-08, adopting the budget for fiscal year 2023-24, imposing and categorizing tax levies, and electing to receive state shared revenue.
Moved by Saunders,
I second.
second by Rivera. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Yes.
Aye.
Opposed? Chair votes aye, motion passes. Thanks, you guys, for catching that. Consent agenda. Megan, you had some comments on number 2, was it?
Yeah, if I can pull 2 off, that'd be great.
Right.
I
So
was gonna say the same.
-2, I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I move we approve the consent agenda without item number 2.
Moved by Saunders,
Second.
second by Zan Miller. Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Chair votes aye, motion passes. Megan,
Of course, didn't write down the note, but somewhere in here. Oh, gosh. In the MOU, it talked about if the land ever stopped being used for a sidewalk, it would go to the state, and I would like it to revert back to us since it's our land. And so I had preemptively talked with Rich and Dustin and Dan, and they thought we could change that language.
It's a typo. It should not be part of this contract. ODOT contracts and IGAs tend to have a lot of boilerplate provisions in them. This is one of them. I mean, we're providing the land so that they can do the project, then they're going to convey it to us. And so it shouldn't ever revert back to ODOT. It assumes that it never was our land to begin with, which is a normal ODOT project.
so mechanically, how should we make this comply with what our lawyer tells us it should say?
Motion to approve is amended.
So
Is that sufficient?
for clarity of minutes, this is page 34 of that packet, item number 2 under terms and conditions. Changing the language to whatever Dan says is appropriate, but it will revert to the city, not the state.
Is that clear enough, Dan?
Right. Yes. Yep. And I'll work with Rich to get that changed with ODOT. And I was briefly offline there for a second. And were there any other questions, Megan, that you had about this thing? I responded with an email, but it kind of came in right as the meeting was beginning.
Then I didn't see it, but yeah, it was just, I had a question of, since these were both parklands, if the charter amendment came into play.
Right. It doesn't come into play at all on this thing. Let me find it here. The charter provision says the city shall not dispose of city parks unless specifically authorized in a public vote by a majority of city voters. So you're not disposing of a city park within the meaning of that term in that charter provision, which says the sale or transfer of any park property rights by lease or other means of all or part of the collection of city parks for any purpose other than promoting or enhancing recreational enjoyment by the general public. I suggest that making it ADA compliant and accessible is fully consistent with public recreational use of public parks. And so I would doubt that anyone would sue the city to challenge this conveyance to have ODOT install compliant ramps. So that's how that charter provision works. I'd be more than happy to defend the city if anyone were to sue the city for those purposes. And even if you lose, it means the voters get the vote as to whether you convey that, I don't know, just a few hundred square feet for the ODOT to construct fully ADA compliant ramps. I doubt such a proposal
Thank you,
would
Dan.
fail.
But on this part, on this pullout.
Okay, so Megan.
That was it.
Okay, so Mark has a comment on number 2 as well.
So we're just adopting a West Side plan at the end of this year. That was what we just spent the last 2 hours on. Why would we want someone to spend a whole bunch of money fixing up stuff that we're going to then tear out as part of an urban renewal plan? It felt sort of imminent. There's drawings and there's things like that. And is it not? It always drives me nuts when an entity does one thing and then tears it out because the next thing is kind of thank you. So
We had we had this conversation with ODOT. They have a settlement agreement that requires them to do it. So they're under obligation to complete a certain number of their ramps. The same conversation came up in the Heights where they had surveyors on scene ready to do this. And I think we were even more concerned at that because it wasn't a prospective urban renewal district. It was an active urban renewal district with an active streetscape plan in the works. We did not want to see, upwards to $1 million installation in a street that was intended to be ripped out, that we were actively planning to be removed. I think part of the issue here is ODOT is under a time frame. We have we don't have an urban renewal district yet. We have some time, and probably the cost associated with that project, like the streetscape project, maybe a decade install. So for the next 10 years, it doesn't feel as wasteful. It may be significant. We do have someone who needs to do this now, and we don't have a likely approach for a project to remedy existing ADA accessible issues for some time. So as Elaine mentioned, you do not have $1 day one of urban renewal. You have to build this up. You probably take unless you bond it and have promises, you don't have a project right now. And it's ODOT's road until it's not their road.
and we can't say, can you put the money in a little bank account? So collect interest for 2 years while we get our.
Mark, I feel your pain truly, I do. And if my mom in a wheelchair comes to visit, the escrow account does not do her a fat lot of good.
It
So
is.
like there is utility.
It is a
until
truism.
Until.
All right, I said my thing. I'm on the lookout for stuff like that. Especially given that they're talking about the Heights too. That one really, please give us a bucket of money and we'll take the street back. Yeah. All right, I'm done.
Any other comments on item number 2? I would entertain a motion.
I would move that we authorize the city manager to sign the MOU with the edit to the terms and condition number 2 discussed tonight. With ODOT granting temporary easements, as well as sign the 2 documents prepared by Epic Land Solutions to donate pieces of city property to ODOT so that they can perform ADA compliance upgrade work to curb ramps.
Moved by Saunders,
I'll second.
second by Rivera. Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Chair votes aye, motion passes. Okay, action items. Do we have any?
No, thanks. That was your action item. It was moved off consent. So you handle an action. Thank you.
City recorder, ordinance 2076.
Your Honor, I'd like to entertain a motion for the second and final reading
of ordinance 2076 by title only.
Moved by Cudahy. Second by Pepino. Roll call, I believe, discussion. Roll call.
Counselor Coonihan,
Aye.
Counselor Zan Miller,
Yes.
Counselor Holston,
Yes.
Counselor Rivera,
Yes.
Counselor Stupina.
Yes.
Counselor Saunders,
Yes.
Your Honor.
Aye.
Ordinance 2076, ordinance proclaiming annexation of certain contiguous territory located within the city's urban growth boundary and withdrawing the same territory from the West Side Rural Fire Protection District, Stenberg Brothers LLC.
Ordinance 2076 has had a second reading and will become law in 30 days. City manager comments. You got anything, Justin? Acting city manager?
Well, I'd like to thank Rich Rice for sticking with us for 3 hours to not say one word. I'd like to thank everyone who came out and spoke. We had a really unique and diverse audience here. And that's really a pleasure to see. Community often, unheard and unspoken and forgotten is here and represented. And this is my city manager bid. So I'm like to take partial credit for Uvaldo, who showed up, was a part of our affordable housing production strategy and stuck with it. That's everything that we've asked and more. So kudos to him.
Kudos to us and you. Thank you, Dustin. Committee reports. Doug, do you have a committee report tonight?
I have nothing to report.
Tim,
Nothing for me.
Megan.
Not for committees, no.
For my committee, the bridge committee, we passed, we submitted our recommendations for the bridge authority. So Grant is our recommendation with me as the alternate. So that's moving forward. The county will be making those appointments like this month. That's big news. And then another committee, the Mayor's Latino Advisory Council, is reemerging. I have asked Councilor Rivera to co-chair with me. We had a wonderful discussion on this topic and are finding our way forward. It's not that simple. For example, do we want to include Indians in that committee as well? That's an interesting question. And so we're discussing it and coming up with perhaps people to get input from and to invite to attend. I didn't feel super successful tonight. We had the odd situation of testimony that many people couldn't understand. We had folks who came kind of too late to speak. Ubaldo is a very powerful advocate, and I met with him and Esteban last week to talk about this issue. I really hope that we're able to do something positive about that trailer park. It's just an emerging issue. As I mentioned, I've spoken to the Housing Authority and the governor about it, but as Justin said, it was a very diverse audience tonight. I'm glad folks know how to come and attended and saw a little bit of our workings, and I don't know, onward.
No committee.
Glad.
No committee updates, but I too just want to take a moment to recognize the audience that was here today, and it felt really good just to be able to communicate with them directly and to let them know the appreciation for them being here and recognizing that it was a barrier for them to come into this room where they don't understand how it works and how we operate. And I really appreciate those efforts for ensuring that folks are coming to make a presence, right? I think that I was completely unaware that there was a transaction happening. So great to see those marginalized community members in the room here with us today. And it just felt incredibly amazing to be able to communicate with them.
Anything else, guys?
Yeah, so we met to talk about what this advisory council could look like and how to tap into other sort of existing groups like the Latinos en Acción, so that we're also taking feedback directly from community members as opposed to just agency folks, right? So we have individuals that work directly with the communities that we're trying to bring to the table and whatnot. I think it can also help Jackie and her communication efforts and being able to be connected to those agencies as we think about, let's get some survey feedback, right? That if we're tapped to the organizations that are connected to the folks that we want to hear from, that they can help be those liaisons in the bridge to bring community perspective into all of our efforts moving forward. That's it for me.
We also had a bridge open house. Went, went, went fine, it was more. Less contentious than the one over at in White Salmon. The White Salmon and Bingen folks are more passionate about the issue because they have to cross the bridge all the time. Makes sense. So there were maybe 20 people that showed up, something like that. And well, I think there were more representatives and staff than attendees actually.
That's what it felt like to me too.
Yeah, we also could have almost taken each person that came in on a one-on-one basis, and they could have had one of us for the entire time they were there. Yeah, so seemed to go fine.
And sort of the outcome is that the toll will increase on September, or October 1st, Grant.
September.
It's coming right up, the toll increase.
But they're still doing a survey about it.
Survey or input, right? Like.
Yes, yes. I think the closing date of that is coming up soon, in a couple of days or so.
And to be clear, the input was option 1 or option 2, so they're deciding which one.
And the difference between the two was very small. It was a quarter between one of the categories in one thing, so it was not a significant or major difference, but based on the stickers that people were putting, they had a preference. So we'll see if that bears through when the results come out and if whatever tolling decisions made.
Anything else on committees, Grant?
Nope.
Mayor comments briefly, 2 things. I had pie with the mayor and it was quite well attended. Interestingly, Jackie included it in a email blast, which goes to 400 people. And I think everyone who came because of that. Oh, excuse me, you said 400. What's the 400 number? Did I make that up? There's 400 people engaged with it, or there was some
400 people opened?
400. Okay, excuse me. Thank you. So the email blast went out to 2,000 people and a lot of them came in. I ran out of pie. So it was a good conversation. I'm going to summarize the comments I got so you guys can know what folks were talking about. Emeritus Mayor Kate came for a while, which was nice to have sort of that perspective and conversation. It was a great day. And then Mark and I went to the cleanup on West Cascade. A lot of people came. It was super well organized. Jackie again, solved that like entity helped with the signups and stuff. There was like, what, a couple dozen people anyway. It was a good day. Those are the mayor comments. Doug, council comment.
I attended the first Friday and went by the city booth. Want to thank Jackie and Abigail for being there, Councilor Polson as well. It was well attended by the community, and I think that that's a tremendous opportunity for us to keep engagement up. The following day, or no, was it 2 days later, I also went to the Streets Alive I'd say, I was going to say project, but I went to Streets Alive. I thought that was really cool to see a lot of people from the community out on their cycles going between the 2 different areas. Also saw Councilor Zan Miller there representing the city, so I wanted to thank him for that. And I hope that we can help promote that next year as well and grow that. I think that's something that's really cool for the community. Yeah, that's it for me.
I had my interview with Radio Tierra on Saturday, which was actually really fun. I hate talking about myself, but I enjoyed it. So yeah, public thank you to Nubia and Radio Tierra for letting us do that. I'm hoping it is. I think it's a good service to the community, and I'm hoping it's helping broaden our reach. So.
Streets Alive was good. I had this little table and most of the conversations I had were about the Heights plan, because it was right in the neighborhood. Everyone loves circles. No one thought it was completely broke. Those those are both good things. And yeah, I agree with Doug that it's nice to have a presence for the city at things where there's population out and about, and finding more of that kind of thing is good, which we've said a million times, but that's everything I have.
Yeah, I recognize it's late, so I'll make this short and sweet. I would love for us to have a conversation around transportation specifically. We've had Carrie Rasmussen come to us on several occasions or send us emails around the number of DUIs that continue to happen and how that number just continues to go up. So I think one, figuring out like who really owns this piece, right? How do we as a city collaborate with MCED, with CAT to try to figure out what can we do or how can we all collaborate to figure out more transportation options as we continue to have OLC licenses come through. I know that we don't like give the final approval that OLCC does, but when we say yes, we make a motion to move the consent agenda, we're saying yes, let's go ahead and include another license when we recognize and our staff tells us that there is a safety concern around the number of DUIs here in the community. So I would also love to understand, is the city creating some sort of unintentional barrier to have options like Uber and Lyft here in the city? I feel like I've never truly comprehended that piece, or again, what barriers are in place that prevent folks from starting an Uber or Lyft or again, additional transportation options, just so that we have options for folks to make it home safely as they come to enjoy our activities throughout the year and whatnot. So I would love for us to have a conversation around that at a different council meeting where we just talk about, what do we see as some of the issues? What are some of the unintentional barriers that are being created so that the outcome is we have more transportation specifically after hours, after 6 p.m.
Great, thank you. Anything else?
That is it for me.
Grant?
Nope.
Okay, Grant gets the last word. I don't think we have an executive session. We are adjourned.
Thank you.
Good job, Dustin.
There you go.